and welcome back to another Nextlander podcast. I'm Vinny Caravella, joined by Alex Navarro.
Yep, I'm here, as always.
Brad Shoemaker.
It's true, I am present.
And not to leave our guest hanging while we do really long introductions, because that could be kind of weird. I should tell you about this time that I really left the guest just sitting there, not able to talk because I don't want to say name names, but they're very respectful and they never talk until they're talked to, and that's always a good thing. I always appreciate that about a really competent, experienced, professional guest, is that they will not introduce themselves.
You know, that's funny. That reminds me of a very long, rambling story I have about another guest we once had, but I won't tell it now. I'll let you tell your. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Friend of the show, Will Smith is here. I will.
I'm allowed to say something now, right?
Get in there.
Okay. Ahoy, hoy.
Yes, the seal has been broken.
Hi. And of course, do you still need clarification for being this Will Smith and not that Will Smith? Is that something that still comes up?
Look, less so now, but sometimes I go places and people are really disappointed to see me, you know, like checking into hotels, restaurant reservations, you know, the usual.
Yeah, because the other Will Smith definitely checks into hotels under his real name.
I mean, I would assume not, but people are really surprised. So, I mean, there are also, I think, currently 2 baseball Will Smiths, and you know, so there's a lot of us to go around. Is all I'm going to say.
Fairly common name.
It's 2 really, really common names glued together. People should not be surprised.
Well, thanks for joining us here, Will Smith, our Will Smith.
Always glad to come by.
The Will Smith I know and love. You've been out making games, doing tech pods, doing all sorts of stuff. We're going to get into the state of the industry and everything. We're going to pick your brain and comb over what has been going on in the industry over in the news section, because, you know, seems like the industry's having a moment.
Look, I'm a bummer specialist, Vinny. I'm here to just bring down the mood and let everybody know that things are going great.
Finally, someone else can be the bummer on this podcast besides me.
Oh, yeah, it's a weird time. It's a weird time.
It is a weird, it's a weird time for a lot of reasons. Yeah. It's also a weird time in video games. But Will,
that's where our expertise lies mostly, so we'll stick to that.
Will, you are also an expert, and I'm glad you're here because I've been wanting to check in with you. You're an expert on being a family man. How are the elementary to middle school transitional memes going?
You mean like do I know what Riz is? Is that what you're asking?
is that where we're at? Is it Riz? Are you Riz? Are you Rizzler? Are you Wizard of Oz?
Are you the Riz King?
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest that the experience of having a middle school daughter is maybe a little different than having a middle school son.
Okay.
I know I've made a bunch of friendship bracelets.
Okay.
I know why the Taylor's versions are important, and that you should only listen to them, not to the OG recordings for
I'm already
all of the Taylor
lost.
Swift albums.
Okay.
What, do you not know about Taylor's version?
No.
Okay, so this is incredible. I like she writes all of her songs, so she owns the songs and she can do whatever she wants with them. But the recordings were owned by her label and Scooter Braun, the noted kind of dirtbag. And she said, "Hey, if you're ever going to sell the rights to the masters, I want to buy them." And then he sold them out from under her without giving them to her.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was on the Kelly Clarkson show, American Idol / the world's Kelly Clarkson. And Kelly Clarkson was like, you should just re-record them all. You own the rights to the songs. And she was like, oh. And so she completely re-records the original versions of the songs as they were originally recorded, just modern, today. That's and re-releases them on Spotify and Apple Music and all the places you can buy discs as Taylor's version, like the name of the album plus Taylor's version.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay, I've seen that going around.
There actually is no analog I can think of, but it's...
But so here's the thing. Bands have been doing this for years to far less notoriety and fanfare compared to like what Taylor Swift does. But I remember when we were working on Rock Band stuff, there were certain bands that would only send re-records in because they did not have they were not talking to their original label. There were disputes between publishing rights and all that kind of stuff. So like a bunch of Third Eye Blind songs that were the songs but not the original recordings ended up in like Rock Band Network because they hated their original label or something and just would not negotiate with them.
So did she do them in the most like sound alike, I'm trying to just replicate the thing exactly way, or did she like actually go, you know what, I'm going to do these different. I'm going to.
She did not George Lucas them up as far. I am not a Taylor. I'm adjacent to, but not a Taylor Swift expert. My understanding is that they are intended to be the original redos of the originals, and she's also kind of weaponized them. So it's possible she has some beeves with artists that maybe, came up on the stage during awards shows when she was a young woman, and maybe are releasing a new album claiming to have some sort of agency in her rise to fame. And so she's just holding the most recent Taylor's version, waiting for him to release his album. Presumably, so that like the
we're
day he's
about Kanye. Let's just say it. We're talking about Kanye.
I didn't want to do it. I want to bring it up.
Some kind of like weird album Cold War of like who's going to launch the nukes first.
She's literally just sitting there waiting for him to release the album, presumably so she could drop it on the same day and take all chance of him having number ones away.
What is going on?
It's amazing.
This is like a Cold War where one side has been completely disarmed, though.
Yeah,
and what
also
power
like
does Kanye still have?
One side is completely right, it turns out. So anyway, yeah. I know a lot about Taylor Swift now. That's the TLDR.
Do you listen to? Is there a lot of Taylor Swift happening in the house? Have you thought about going to? At some point, was there talk of trying to get tickets to the Eras tour?
We have tickets for a Vancouver show, the last show of the tour right now. Next December.
Really?
This December.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like. Gina did a good job. Like she was like super on it, has tried to get tickets off and on over the last couple of years. This one, she got them, and then she got the tickets. She's like, "Holy shit, I got the tickets!" And then immediately realized that she paid Canadian dollars for them. So she's like, "Shit, I could have gotten much better seats than I did because it was Canadian dollars."
Yes. Right.
But yeah, so presumably we're going to Vancouver unless we decide.
And it's one of the last shows of the tour.
I think it's the last show of the tour.
That's kind of that's like the show you want to be at, right?
It's like I'm pretty stoked about it. Like I'm like I think 1989 is a great album. The rest of it, I'm kind of
This has been a long fucking tour too, hasn't it? Because she's been touring since like middle of last year. I feel like
she started. She's kind of. I think she's only doing weekends, which is like it's a big stadium tour, so that makes sense.
And sometimes not Sundays because she has to go be at her boyfriend's football games.
Yeah, there's that whole thing too. But yeah, so I don't know. It seems like a big, like it seems like she set out to make $1 billion and then did that immediately, and like like maybe she's the only ethical billionaire. I don't know.
Maybe she needs to start setting her aims higher, because I think Taylor Swift deciding to make $1 million does not actually feel like it takes that much work.
Sorry, $1 billion. Alex.
I know,
$1 billion.
I know. Yeah. I'm still saying I don't think that's. I think she's going to be the first one to reach for $1 trillion.
Yeah, the race to trillionaire starts now.
She will be a small country by the time I am dead.
I'm still waiting for the turn. I gotta say TBD on Taylor Swift. All that money, what happens? It just gets in you and stuff starts happening pretty soon. She's like, just the money's not enough, and then it's like human sacrifice or whatever billionaires do in their basements, and
You sound like you're eager to cancel Taylor.
No, I'm not. Look, I have no kind of skin in the game for Taylor Swift. What I do fear are the Swifties out there. So like, no, Taylor Swift is cool by me. Everything's great, but
I love that we're talking about her like it's fucking Big Brother. Like there's a fucking video screen of Tay-Tay behind me just watching for me to do some wrong speak here.
I saw that. The only thing I saw recently was that clip from was it the Emmys where she does the
Golden Globes.
Oh, the Golden Globes.
Yeah,
and that is a person I do not want to cross. That was the look of somebody who could have me killed in an instant or worse.
You just don't ever want to do anything that's going to make her write a song about you. That's the way. That's the thing that's the TLDR.
There's no good way through that one.
Nope.
Okay.
That's not recoverable. You're just gonna have to go find a hole to live in after that, I think. So
what happens? What's her boyfriend's name? Is it
Travis Kelce?
Kelce, right? So can he ever break up with her, or she has to wait until she breaks up with him at this point?
I believe that the official Swiftie fandom right now believes that he is the one. So
Oh boy.
I'm telling you right now, this one has lasted longer than I feel like a lot of the other ones have, and if that does end, that's an album. That's not a song. That is an album.
Alex, are you a secret Swiftie here? Is this what I'm finding out?
Not remotely. In fact, I am constantly mystified by the number of people in my life who reveal themselves to be Swifties whenever a new thing from her drops. I feel like 6 more people in my following suddenly just turn in an instant the second one of her albums shows up on Spotify, and I'm just like, I find all of it completely inoffensive, but also completely uninteresting. Like, there's just nothing about her music or her persona or anything that even resonates with me. But that's fine, because I also just don't hate it. Like, nothing about it is, like, bad or offensive. It's just like, all right, this is extremely not for me.
Wait, you're saying that it's okay for there to be art that's made that's not explicitly for you?
I mean, I prefer that it wasn't the dominating thing in popular culture, but, I mean, whatever. You know, it's like, I don't have any fucking determination over that.
It's like a weird thing where like it feels like Taylor Swift got what is the thing from the original Assassin's Creed, the apple of Eden, the thing that she keeps in a box backstage during every concert that emanates out like not mind control but like good vibes. Like, I really just like, I didn't think I would, but I just really like this Taylor Swift. I just want to buy albums.
There's a joke I remember from Twitter a while ago where someone was talking about Jeremy Renner, like the actor, and how like basically his entire vibe is a guy who like works at like Home Depot that somehow was granted many wishes by God because he's just such a weird normal guy that does not feel like a celebrity. That's Taylor Swift to me. She is just the most normcore girl in the world that somehow God has bestowed all blessings upon.
Dude, Renner had that app. He had an app named after him, and I was like, that came out, I was like, dude, you don't rate this. Like,
no,
people who are 10 times bigger celebrities than you don't have apps named after them.
Taylor Swift rates for an app. She should have her own app.
Oh, man,
she should have a phone. She should have an app,
an ecosystem. Is Jeremy Renner okay?
I think
did Snowcat fall on him? Like,
that's been a while. Yeah, he was grievously injured like a year ago or something. He was on the mend last.
He's been recovering, as far as I know.
Clearly you haven't been watching Renovations on Disney Plus. Is
that a real thing?
That was a real thing.
That is a real thing.
Man,
somehow not a 30 Rock joke, an actual show that someone made.
Good branding, huh? I was like,
that's not
out there.
Rebuilding Jeremy Renner. That's like him doing houses and stuff.
He's like Habitat for Humanity, but for people's houses. Look, Robert Downey Jr. had his car thing, right? He turned a bunch of gas cars electric for inexplicable reasons. Yeah, Jeremy Renner should get to do his renovations.
Sure.
Do it. Yeah. What's Taylor Swift got?
The world in her hand.
Yeah. Anything she wants, I think,
keeps it spinning, keeps economies going around.
Yeah.
She's Death Clock. Like, she's literally like, she's the fake band that somehow is the 6th largest economy in the world. Like, that's what she is.
All right. Speaking of, this is going to be a good transition. Ready? Speaking of grievously injured and returning from near death,
I'll allow it.
Tekken 8.
Are you saying that Taylor Swift is the Heihachi Mishima of the world, of our world?
I would have to understand, I think, more of the Tekken universe to delve into those kind of analogies.
Some of them are devils. Every game, someone gets thrown in a volcano. That's all you really need to know.
Tekken 8 is out. I finished the story mode in that game. That game is bananas. They have like a, hey, catch up on the Tekken series. Here are 7 little vignettes you can watch.
And it's a fucking joke. Let me tell you right now. Even as someone who has played all these games, those catch-ups are a fucking joke.
Who did they get for that video? Brian, help me out here.
Oh, this is not the video, the same video.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. They didn't just put that in the game. Also, who is that actor again? Help me out, Alex.
Oh, it's Brian Cox.
Succession.
Brian Cox, right? Yes.
They is more useful, honestly. That video.
They didn't just put that in the game. That's a shame.
No.
You do get the sense they understand that throwing people off cliffs and volcanoes is probably the most important thing because they kind of just start each video with like, and then he threw his son off a volcano.
It's the whole brand at this point.
Yeah.
I just assume it's like smash cut. It's like a smash cut of people being held over their head, hucked into the volcano.
Yep,
like
yes.
Boom, boom, boom,
yes.
boom.
This
boom.
time, Grandpa goes in the volcano.
Yeah.
All right.
So I had to spend a little time.
Son.
I had to spend a little time going through some third-party source materials to kind of clear up some things. But I will say this about the story: it's a 15-chapter story, and I was like in and out. it's fairly short. It's probably fewer than 5 hours, but like
I'm halfway through it, and I feel like I've done it in about 2 hours, 3 hours at most.
It's a fairly short thing, depending on I guess what you set your settings to. I walked through every single fight, maybe except for the couple at the end where I had to do a couple of times. But I'm playing on medium, but I'm also doing the woke controls to borrow the term from Street Fighter.
Yeah, what are those called? Special. What is it called? Special style?
Special style,
Isn't that what they call it? That the assist mode is called special style, which is an incredible name.
That's how I order my hamburger at In-N-Out.
I'm doing special style, and it really just lets me kind of bulldoze through those fights in a way that kind of feels... I'm not in it right now for... I like Tekken. I like the Tekken fighting system. I do, but I wanted to get through that story mode because... About 10 chapters in, it's like hit or miss, and you're like, this is some anime bullshit that I'm not into.
Oh, it's the most anime bullshit. Like, I honestly think Tekken might be the most anime fighting game that is not explicitly based on an anime.
So then 10 to 15 is the most anime bullshit I do like.
Yeah.
So 10 to 15 takes it, and then it just goes off the rails in a way that even for my knowledge of Tekken feels you've lost all goddamn control of this story, and it's kind of amazing.
They know what they're doing.
So about whereabouts in the story? You said about halfway, Alex?
Yeah, I'm past like all the stuff with like the opening round of the King of Iron Fist tournament, and kind of like into sort of a little bit more of the meat of what happens after that first round.
They're basically, you get to a point where there's this big field battle that happens where you're switching between different characters, and that's, for me, was the turning point of... There's one fight in the middle of this apocalyptic battle where the fate of humanity is happening that they have to gin up. It's a fighting game, so they have to gin up reasons for characters to fight each other. And one is, there's this character who's an MMA fighter, and... She jumps in and she's
a Peruvian girl, right? Yeah.
And she jumps in and the guy's like, you signed up with the bad guys? And she's like, I think it's really good for my brand. I think I'm gonna sell more coffee this way. And then you fight. And then the fight ends and she's like, are you a coffee drinker? That's right. I'm out of here. I better go rethink my branding strategy, and leaves. And and they're just trying to. One's about somebody owes somebody money. They're just coming up with the reasons for these characters to be fighting each other that make no sense at all, and that's kind of great.
And then also treating those scenes with deathly seriousness, which is exactly the right tone for how stupid it all is.
So, like, do I love the story mode in it? Not really, but
it's entertaining.
It's kind of fun, and I think if I were playing it like somebody who actually should be playing Tekken were playing it, then I'd be more frustrated with it. But I'm just there for that mode for the story, and it's a lot of fun and not too long.
Yeah, but that's not the only story.
That's not the only story. Then you have every character's
arcade story.
Yeah, like the ones that you're like, okay, let me get your side story, which are done pretty well because you actually do get some narrative and cutscenes in there.
Yeah, it's mostly just a series of 5 fights, and then there's like a little bit of bookending story, but usually the end cutscenes are pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are they in the grand tradition of, let's say, Tekken 2 and 3?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. I need to check some of those out. The story stuff is the one thing I have not really gotten into in this. I have a question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I've messed with other modes. Is there any Heihachi in there? Because the distinct lack of Heihachi elsewhere.
I don't want to spoil any story stuff.
Concerning to me.
I thought he got thrown into a volcano at the end of the last one.
Yeah, but like Kazuya
never
also,
stopped anyone.
Kazuya also has gotten thrown into a volcano like 5 times, and he's doing pretty well.
He's doing better, if anything.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that Heihachi.
Right.
Okay.
There's got to be.
What's the eyebrow sitch on Heihachi? Should he show up? Is it like, are we talking like, is he like a Dune, like a David Lynch Dune character? Or is he like, does he have like little wings that look like they're waxed? Like, where are we at with that?
He doesn't want to spoil it.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it. Let's just say that the presence of Heihachi is always felt throughout.
Yeah, they mention him a lot, even in the opening stuff. So
there is a new character in the game. Gosh, what is her name?
The girl with the purple hair?
Yeah, do you remember her name?
Not off the top of my head, but...
I like playing as her, and she fights in the... Brad, you could probably pull this off the top of your head. What is it? What's the Zaibatsu? The Heihachi's last name?
Mishima Zaibatsu?
Yeah, Mishima. She fights in the Mishima style, which is fun. I like that.
Interesting.
I also really liked her like, because the story mostly focuses on Jin and him sort of like losing and then regaining his devil power and stuff. And he runs into her and he's like, I've saw some of these moves before. And she's like, oh, I just watched some stuff on YouTube.
Totally. Some stuff I saw on the internet. Don't worry about it. I also like in the story, everybody speaks in their country of origin's native tongue to each other. So there's
an implied understanding of all languages among all world warriors in this game.
It's kind of amazing because you just hear like people speaking in German, then answering in Japanese, and a third party answering in Italian throughout all of this stuff. That's kind of amazing.
There's also a really ridiculous thing in the character select where when you highlight people, among their stats, it lists nationalities, you know? So it'll be like June, Japanese, Eddie, Brazilian. Kazuya says, none, relinquish Japanese citizenship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he has bigger aims.
Yeah.
So it's really silly. I think the sides, I did 1.5 of this or less side story stuff. I did one because I was really curious what this character's side story is going to be after the, I did that.
Obviously you mean Jack 8, right? The most important character in all of Tekken.
I did not do Jack 8 and I did not do Akuma yet.
Jack is usually the first guy I go for in that stuff because he was the one I always like leaned on in the arcades. There are better characters in this game, I will say, but I did have a lot of fun with Jack 8. He has a very good dumb ending to his little arcade story.
Okay, good. I'm curious. I saw in the story the introduction of Jack 8.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what happens.
Jack and King were always my guys.
And what do you think of like Paul with the like floppy hair?
Dude, Paul looks fucking rough, man. Paul looks like he's been sleeping on the side of a highway embankment for the last 6 months.
Yeah. I played Reina's story, the new girl with the purple hair. Is it blue or purple?
Okay, now that I'm realizing there might actually be, there's one girl who has like bluish purple hair who is the one we were talking about before, and then there's Reina who is the girl that is the more anime girl that is just straight up purple hair, I think.
Wait, I think you're mixing them up. Reina's the one who saw the moves on YouTube.
Okay, that's who I'm thinking of then. I'm thinking of the other robot girl who has
Elisa?
Elisa, yes, okay.
Yes, I did not, she kind of looks like a robot, and I was like, she must be from another game, I don't realize, but then when you fight her, she takes her head off. And I'm like, okay, you're a robot.
Let's just say Jack's story also involves a little of that.
Yeah, fun characters, pretty dumb characters. The story stuff, the side stuff seems fun. A lot of characters go through the side stuff. But there's the arcade mode.
Which is a whole other thing.
Allows you to play as an avatar-looking doofus if you want to make your doofus. Mine has like a sideways hat with sunglasses.
So those are the avatars are also used in the online like lounge.
Yes,
we'll talk about that later. I don't know if you guys have messed with those or not.
I did not get into that.
I've messed. Anyway, we can get into it.
But the arcade mode is a meta thing where Tekken 8 has just dropped in arcades, and your friend Max is going to teach you how to play Tekken 8 in the guise of you trying to enter this arcade tournament.
Oh, so is that what teaches you how to use like heat and all the
tutorial
new mechanics? Okay, I should have gotten into that.
The game does not communicate that well. I will say that is really, where the learning happens.
They really just dump you into a bunch of menus and just be like, here's all the modes, just figure it out. I absolutely would have started with that. I mean, they do pop everything up, you know, there's like a 5-page pop-up about the heat system when you first get in there that I was just like, man, I don't want to read all this right now. I just want to play.
I mean, that's the same thing I had with the story. I was like, I don't want to, like, I scrolled through the 3 pages. I was like, I'm going to forget this in a second.
I mean, the heat system isn't that complicated. It's just another meter thing. And, you know, basically you pop it off with a button press. And then once you do that, you can follow that up with what is basically a heat action, you know, like in Yakuza, like it is just a larger, it's not the rage attack, but it is like a stronger attack that you can launch into. And then also while you are in heat mode, basically, when you hit an opponent that's blocking, it does more chip damage.
Okay, that all sounds super straightforward. It's just the way they present it to you is just very much like it's not explained well, or
I agree
in a way that's very engaging at all.
Also, you don't build it up necessarily. You just start with it in the match. So you kind of start with it, and you can do it once per round.
Yeah.
And you know, then there's the rage stuff. And
that's like you're down to your last health, and then you just like pop that thing off, and it does a giant attack.
And I didn't play much 7. I know 7 was well regarded.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I didn't play much of it, so I'm not sure what's coming over from 7 into 8. And was Heat in 7, or is that new?
I think
8?
Heat is the new thing. I want to say
new,
I believe the rage arts were very much like in the last game.
Okay. I liked what I played so far. Look, we don't have to go over this again, but I play fighting games for the story. I know it's ridiculous. Have your laugh, everybody. It's okay.
Vinny, I'm with you. I like Mortal Kombat. I'll play Mortal Kombat every time, and as soon as I finish the story, I'm probably good.
You know, the highest selling fighting game franchise out there emphasizes its story mode over everything else. So I think that's fine at this point. Also, I think I saw, at least in the UK, Tekken 8 had a bigger launch than Street Fighter 6.
I believe it.
Anyway.
I mean,
story mode. Point is, like, story modes are like, a lot of people play story modes in fighting games.
Well, and they've gotten good, is the thing. Like, especially in the years since MK really started emphasizing that stuff, like, they've gotten a lot more interesting in these games. Like, Tekken has definitely embraced that stuff. Street Fighter has gotten better at it. Like, more of these games are embracing that. So it doesn't feel like I watch porno for the stories thing. Like, it's like, actually, they're putting some effort into this stuff.
Yeah, and the Tekken stuff has always been just so silly that I've always really enjoyed where they take those things. But I didn't play 7. I don't know which Tekken it was, but I played it in college a bunch. I printed out all the moves because I was in college.
Probably
and had
2 or
access
3.
To a printer.
Yeah.
2 and 3 were the ones, I think.
Okay.
I mean, not to say that 4 through 6 are bad.
But those are like the
anything.
big arcade ones.
Must have been 3 because it had Devil Jin.
That was 3 probably.
Jin was new in 3.
What was the PS2 launch one? Was that Tekken? That was like 2EX or something?
That was Tekken Tag Tournament. You're talking about the one that launched with the PS2?
Yeah.
That was Tekken.
That was the one that the first time you used the bumpers, and I was like, oh, this is the thing you can play not on a stick, basically.
Dude, Tekken Tag still in my memory is like, if I don't look at it in front of my face, it's still like one of the best looking games ever made.
Oh, yeah.
The impression, the impression that it made as a PS2 launch game at the time, I was like, holy shit, video games look good now.
Yeah.
Yes. It was the thing people were calling other people around to look at, to be like, dude, check this out.
It was like that in 5 minutes of Ready to Rumble boxing.
I went to somebody's house to see Tekken Tag, and I was like, oh, this is a video game.
Actually, I'm not sure if it was Jin or... Because Caillou has the Devil Gene also. Kazuya has the Devil Gene also, right?
Oh, yeah. He was Devil first.
Okay, maybe he was that was the one I played. I remember there being a super cheap move where you just fly in the air and you shoot lasers out of
2 had that.
Okay.
So that could have been 2.
I feel like fighting games really lean into the hey, you're probably gonna have to punch your granddad at some point thing, which is kind of it's a really unique feature of the genre. Like you don't get into like predecessor punching a whole lot in like your RPGs or your first person shooters.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, patricide is a pretty regular feature of JRPGs. I just think there's a lot of patricide going on in. I'm just going to say, like, anime and sort of Japanese, like, media. It feels like everyone is going for the king, and the king often is your dad.
Or the king's king.
Yeah.
He's an amazing wrestler.
He's not even the original king. This is King 2.
Oh, right. I forgot all about that.
They killed King 1.
Man, on some level, Tekken has the most amazing cast or lineup of any fighting game franchise.
Tekken was... Okay, so when I was in college playing, I played... Hwang, the Taekwondo guy?
Yeah. Hwarang,
yeah.
I always said it, I don't know.
And I remember having to play that game with the stick on my leg and using my finger. Like, was at that point it not a good controller game? Was it more of a fight stick kind of game?
Because any fighting game was a great controller game back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a 4-button game, right? So I think it was generally fine.
Okay.
I think it's more just like
they always had things like circle and like X or something, or like what's the one that's
like
across
like square and circle at the same time. Like, yes, they were definitely. I would just like lay my thumb flat across horizontally to hit stuff like that.
Okay. This is pretty good. I like it so far.
It's really fun is the thing. Like even if you just get outside like all the modes and bells and whistles and stuff and just kind of dig into the actual fighting. Like, look, Tekken 7 was fucking fantastic, and this feels like just about as good to me. Like, is it radically different? No, but I didn't really want that coming into this. It wasn't like a Street Fighter 5 situation where I felt like they had to do something pretty drastically different to make 6, palatable to people. But this is a lot of fun. It's tight. There's a good character variety, style variety. Like, I haven't done a lot of online because I'm just not that good at Tekken, but like what I have played, even though I have gotten my ass kicked, has felt at least competitive. So, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I wanted good Tekken. I am getting good Tekken.
Did you guys have you messed with the what is their name for their kind of online lounge thing? Did you go in there?
I popped
where
in there
Avatar,
very briefly. Yeah,
that thing is kind of like a really crappy version of the Street Fighter 6 Battle Hub.
It's much better in Street Fighter. Yes,
yeah, like the Street Fighter partially because the character creator is so good in Street Fighter 6. You can see all the monstrous designs just running around right in front of you, and this, like you said, is full on Xbox 360 Avatar style.
100%.
Like little cutesy paper doll looking thing is what you run around in this thing with.
It almost looks legally actionable in terms of like how similar they are.
Yeah, which is a real bummer because I haven't messed with it, but by all accounts, the actual character creator, like for the fighters in this, is incredible. That's the other thing, is that I went into that hub looking for a way to browse people's designs, and I can't find it. And if
I
that's
haven't
not
messed with any of that stuff.
Yeah, me either.
If that's not in there, that is criminal, because some of the screenshots I've seen of people's designs going around on Twitter are pretty excellent. But I've not seen a way to browse those.
My current path right now is I'm going to probably finish the arcade mode to actually learn how to play Tekken 8, and then go back in, finish the other side story stuff, and then maybe look at some of those other things, and then probably put it down and never play online or competitive ever again. Because that's kind of how my adult life goes with fighting games. Absorb it. Just read the book. That's all I want to do, is read the Tekken book.
This has been an incredible last 12 months for fighting games, like just in terms of overall quality. And it's actually kind of shocking to me that I think the one I was maybe the least into overall was Mortal Kombat, but I liked all of them is the thing. So we're all feasting right now.
Yeah. See Sonic Fox out there threatening to abandon MK1.
No, why?
It's been like a couple weeks now. I didn't get too deep into the rationale, but the gist was basically just, hey, the game needs help big time.
Yeah.
Like, again, I don't know what the particulars are, but the message was very much like, hey, NetherRealm has got some serious work to do if this thing is going to stay viable competitively.
They were always struggling with MK to get it into sort of the limelight of like, main stage Evo, like not just being kind of the first day final stuff. And I don't know, man. Like I mean, I'm on the outside looking in here, but the perception I get is that very little about MK1 has really shifted that weight at all. Like in very much like it feels like people are just sort of like, this has a lot of the same problems the other MK games, and it's not pulling in like new players or a lot of like new excitement around the current state of MK. And so that actually doesn't completely surprise me.
Yeah, I fell off of it almost immediately after finishing the story. I put like a good 3 months into MK11's online.
Same.
And this I played for like a few days online and just kind of didn't go back.
Their NetherRealm games are still published by Warner too, right? So that is not a publisher that has a great record, like, keeping live games live for long periods of time. They're a little spotty.
Well, I mean, the one exception I feel like to that has been NetherRealm up to this point, because NetherRealm has been able to support those games pretty well in especially the last trilogy. But right now, I feel like nobody is talking about MK1 anymore, and that is kind of a bummer.
I don't think I mentioned it, but in the run up to MK1 coming out, I played some MKX online.
Mm-hmm.
Did I talk about that?
You did.
Did I? Okay, yeah.
Just briefly,
you can still play like 3 games ago MK online, and it's still functional, and there's like 3 people playing it still.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck out there, Tekken, and to everybody playing Tekken online.
Some good ass Tekken.
Some pretty good Tekken. Some pretty silly story stuff out there. All right, let's take. Yeah. No, go ahead.
You'd think they'd like learn to avoid volcanoes now, right? Like you'd think like somebody's like, "Hey, you come meet me at the volcano." You'd be like, "No, I'm not going to go there. That's a bad idea." But they keep going.
They both want to throw each other in. They're like, "Oh, this is great.
We can't end the story until we go to the volcano."
Hubris. Thy name is Volcano.
There is one character. I think it's Reina, whose bark at the end is something like, or at the end of her side story thing, because you fight Kazuya. After she's done beating him, goes, "Well, I don't see a suitable cliff nearby, so I guess I'll just leave you there," which is pretty good.
That's fabulous.
All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. Will, I want to hear what you've been up to and what you've been playing. Stick around. We'll get to it right after this. All right, Will, we are back. And what you been up to? What you been playing?
I've been playing old games. Well, I play Fortnite all the time, but Fortnite's Fortnite. You build things.
That's an old game.
It's an old game that is new again.
Is it a game like these days? Fortnite is like running around, and while you're waiting for fights to stop, you just like play Fuser for a little bit. It seems like.
Are you? Did you play Lego Fortnite?
Played a fair amount of Lego Fortnite. Kind of reached the end of what's in there. And,
you did.
Yeah, it's a good one of those, I guess. I don't know.
I played a bunch with the kids, and then we all got tired of having the traveling felt too long from zone to zone.
It needs something better than the glider, and like you need to be able to build like fast travel portals between your bases, right? It's a good, like, I would have, if I had paid $40 for that, I wouldn't be disappointed, I think, is where I ended up, which is amazing because it was free.
Yeah. I think it felt like an early access one of those to me. Like, oh, they'll probably add some more stuff in here to kind of give the user some more options in this stuff. Like, I'm never a huge fan, and you probably play more survival games than I do, of durability on items, and it's a thing that happens in all survival games. I hate when my pickaxe is breaking. I just gotta go make a new one. Right?
I'll be honest, I'm a little tired of punching trees at this point. I played a lot of those games. I'm probably okay for a while, right?
Yeah. They need a thing in Lego Fortnite for recycling bad weapons. I don't know if they have them, but like I wind up with like 1 million wooden pickaxes, and I'm like, what the hell do I do with these?
I have a little cabin that's just filled with them. It's just like it's like the cheese wheels all the way to the ceiling of green busted ass gray pickaxes that like skeletons drop.
Right? Yeah. Yes. What do you do with them? Just burn that thing down at some point.
Just let it sit there, and eventually the server resets and they go away.
Will, as an avid Fortnite player, what is your read on like all these modes they keep shoving in there? Are they just chasing Roblox? Or are they just trying to say like, hey, look at all the other types of games you can make in this framework?
I think something else there. I mean, I think they were trying to get time spent in game up, because time spent in game has a direct connection to money spent in game on that kind of game. The thing that kind of surprises me is that they're all pretty good. Like I mean, Alex, I mean, you were at Harmonix for a long time. I'm sure you have feelings about how that. Like,
I do.
Like it's both of the things that they put in, the Harmonix ones are the softest of the things that they've added, I think. Like the rocket racing is shockingly deep. Like if you want to watch some trippy stuff, load up like a high level rocket racing play and watch how people are controlling, like basically using Rocket League physics in a racing kind of scenario, and like people are doing bananas stuff in that. The Lego thing was surprisingly deep. Like I think everybody hit the end of it pretty quickly, but there's a thing there for sure. And then adding the jam band stuff into the fuser stuff into like the battle royale, so you can just bust out and start like take the bass line from March of the Pigs and like the vocals from Bad Guy and like some weird Fortnite song that they made for Fortnite and make a pretty okay sounding song, and while people are shooting at you.
What?
Like,
wait, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that like all the jam loop stuff, like the Fuser style.
They took like all of Harmonix's patents and somehow jammed them in there.
Yeah, and like they sell songs for 500 V-Bucks each, which I don't know that's probably like $1,000. I have no idea what a V-Bucks cost. But yeah,
I know that the DLC is more expensive than the Rock Band DLC, which never went up in price. It was always $2 a song.
Yeah, I think it's $5. My guess is it's either $6 or $5. It's either $4 or $6. I can't remember which way V-Bucks go. But it's like it's a real weird ad in the middle of a competitive shooter, but it kind of works, and it fits the, hey, like the Fortnite vibe is always like, should we make this sweatier and more competitive, or should we just make it fun? And they seem to always err on the side of fun, which I appreciate.
PDP, just real quick here, PDP apparently announced their guitar today. Like IGN had a preview of it. Looks all right. I might actually get one just because I only have one working RB4 guitar right now, and it looks like they're Xbox compatible, so I will probably just grab one of those.
The word is that your RB4 instruments are probably going to come to the Fortnite version of the Harmonix main stage.
They said they wanted to do that, yeah.
It was part of this list that like that announcement included that as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is it a 4-button at the top of the neck?
A 5-button.
5-button.
Yeah, it's the regular 5-button.
Okay. No buttons at the bottom of the neck?
No, it has the bottom of the neck buttons, but it's the same functionality as the other guitars, where it's just like a double of the same buttons.
Interesting. Okay. For, pretending to do your soloing.
Yeah. But they look all right. Like, they look like okay guitars. Like, they're a little more Guitar Hero looking than the old Rock Band straight up, here's a Fender, but like, they look like good builds.
It's kind of I like the SG look to it, kind of.
And the neck folds. which I thought was nice. It's like it's self shrinking.
The RB4 guitars did that. That's where they introduced that.
Nice.
Will, what else have you been playing?
So I've been playing Tunic.
That was a good game.
Like it came out when I was busy. It turns out a couple of last year maybe, and I never got to it. And I'm fun employed now, so I have a little bit of time, and I fired it up on the old Steam Deck, and man, that's a good video game. It turns out
pretty good. How far into it are you?
Like probably I don't know. I've hit one of the bells. I'm at the second bell.
Okay.
I've gone east pretty far now.
Okay.
I keep finding stuff behind stuff. Yeah, it's way harder than I was expecting. Kind of. Like I guess I didn't know exactly what to expect from this, and I was expecting kind of a straight Zelda like, and it's a little more complicated than that, which has been fun.
A little more actiony. A little more combat focused. Yeah,
like it's weird though, because like the blocks, some of the stuff's slower than I expected. I love that it's just obscures. I think maybe I can increase my attack and defense and stuff by eating stuff, but I don't know because the manual's written in some weird language that I don't understand, and I'm just pressing buttons and trying stuff, and I guess I need to call my Nintendo uncle or whatever and get them to tell me how the game actually works.
Call the tip line.
Yeah.
It is very NES. It's not like it's not some great revelation or something, but I have been playing some NES games recently, and boy, like I jumped into Section Z the other day, for example, and it was like, man, they don't tell you anything. They never did.
I went back to play the original Metal Gear last year and was like, wow, same thing. There's no, it's like press A to do things and press B to do other things, and then good luck. Mm-hmm. Here's the inventory screen. And this has that kind of that similar vibe. So,
but you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought it was a Steam Deck game, and I ended up sitting in front of the computer playing it more often than anything. Not because of perf or anything, but just because it's worthy of like full attention in a dedicated space. And I was pleasantly surprised by that.
I really, really like Tunic. I thought for some of the very much, I think, optional later puzzles, I thought they asked too much of someone. But for the most part, I love things that have language, weird, arcane, mystery languages that you decipher. And I thought the manual pages and discovering those manual pages was super fun. Later on, though, I'm like, oh my God, I'm too old. I don't have the time to do what you're asking me here. Stop it. Okay, we're done. And I just wound up looking some stuff up.
I looked at, I was sitting there looking at the pause menu the other day, and I was like, oh, the pause menu has the weird glyphs on it. I could probably use the context of this to start on a decrypting the thing. Because I did that, I found playing Fez, I did that a decade ago. And I'm like, these glyphs are too hard to read and too far from what I'm accustomed to as a human for me to do this work on, I think. Because I don't think I can write these down realistically. It's not like I can make a decryption cheat sheet. Yeah. So my assumption is that they don't want me to do that, but also maybe I'll fire up the stream one night and just open it up and start on the glyph pad and see what I can do. It's the thing that shocked me about it more than anything was how hard the first hour of it is. It's a hard start. It doesn't tell you really where to go.
Nope.
You kind of only have one path, but it's like in the modern context where I don't think it was, I can't remember if it was on Game Pass or not. But it was it would have been a scary game to release. Cause you have 5 minutes to grab people these days. And that game kicked my ass for a good hour before I kind of got to the point that I had my feet under me and had found a shield and all the stuff that I needed to be kind of combat complete.
I'm glad you're playing through it. I think it's a phenomenal game. So hopefully it grabs you. And if you like the language stuff, don't sleep on Chance of Sonar if you haven't played it. Chance of Sonar, great game. I'll just say good for decoding languages. Pretty much the entire game's hook.
I'm adding it to the list.
Oh, please do. Yeah, you should check it out. Will, any other games you want to talk about you've been up to?
So the other one I've been playing is another old game because that's my jam today. Is Rounds. A friend of mine recommended it to play on the stream, and it's in that Ultimate Chicken Horse kind of 4-player. Well, Okay, I guess by default it's a 1 to 2 player game, but it also has extensive mod support. So if you install the mods, you can play up to like 16 players. And it is I think they describe it as a roguelite, but it's basically each round you start as a little ball guy who can jump around and shoot stuff, right? You shoot at other people, you can block. It's really simple. The block's on a really long cooldown. And everybody who loses the round gets to pick a card that gives them some power up. So that's where your roguelike progression comes in. And the default cards are great. There's mods that add hundreds of additional cards, and you can build really kind of buck wild. You can build block heavy builds, you can build shoot heavy builds, you can build like debuff and like dot damage over time builds. It ends up being a real good kind of chaos couchy game, and it works great with the Steam. What is it called? Steam Stream, multiplayer
so you can get
streaming
remote local stuff going.
Yeah, so since
stream sharing or
stream sharing, yeah. It's since you need really the mods to make it work great. It's a pain in the ass to keep everybody's mods in sync. Okay. So it's easier for me to just like set up the mods on my machine and then share it out with the people I'm playing with.
Remote Play Together? Is that their official name for
That is the official name, yeah.
Okay, that's not a great name.
No, says what it is.
RPT.
Hey, yeah, you can remote play, but together, Vinny, it's perfect sense.
Are those workshop mods, or are they just mods that people have hacked in there? Because I don't see workshop support on the Steam page.
So it doesn't have workshop support. You have to do it with Thunder, the Thunder Store, I think is what it's called, which is now owned by Overwolf. It's the same thing you used to do, like Java Minecraft mods, in my experience. So
yeah. That's a cool idea, like rewarding, or not rewarding, but like giving the power ups to the losers of each round is a cool way to kind of keep escalating everything. It's just sort of power creep. Get people back in the game who are
automatically rubber bands. Like occasionally somebody will put together a build that's like madly overpowered and they'll win like 2 rounds in a row, and then everybody else gets 2 cards to catch up and also tends to gang up on the person that's winning. So like it just kind of, it self-corrects in a way that is ridiculous. And like it's not like a sport in the same way that like a fighting game is, but it's a very fun way to spend an hour with some friends.
Yeah, also the animation on some of these effects also is bananas. Like I'm kind of surprised I had never heard of this before. I'm surprised it didn't like take off more because it looks pretty rad.
Well, they have a shock, like looking at their Steam page, they have like 20,000 reviews. It's overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah,
I had never heard of it. I was shocked.
I'm with you. I'm going to pick this up and try and play with the kids. And this looks like a fun game too for when my son has friends over and they need something to play together.
My daughter and I play it fairly regularly, and then I also, like I said, I load up the 4-player mod and we play. I think more than that, it might be a little slow. Okay. But the 4 players is quite good.
And it still holds together at 4 players.
It gets chaos. So the big thing that happens when you install the more than 4-player mod is instead of having a best of 5, you go to best of 3 because you end up with way more cards, assuming somebody doesn't run away with it. Like in the mix with 4 players,
sure.
It ends up it's just like in the same way that Chicken Horse devolves when you get late game and like things are crazy and people have like black holes and there's arrows circling the black holes and there's fireballs going everywhere. It's the same kind of good fun chaos. So
Rounds available on Steam, $6.
It's
a game.
It's 2 on Humble.
Oh yeah, okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
Don't tell anybody.
Well, tell everybody.
Yeah, it's
$2 on Humble.
Yeah, $2 on Humble. It's a lot of fun.
Will, have you tried the latest craze in video games?
Ooh,
Palworld.
You mean, wait, as I understand it, that's the game where the Pokemons have guns, right?
So after about 12 hours, yes.
Wait, what?
So I know that's so I booted this up. It's on Game Pass, and I was like, we talked, I think, a little bit about it last time, aside from all the kind of controversy and stuff circling around it, about the difference between the console versions and the Steam version, and, servers and what gets updates. And I was like, I'm going to try this on Game Pass because I don't know if I want to buy it yet, even though I think the game's like $30. And it's much more, my humble opinion, is that it is much more a rock and stick survival punch tree games than a Pokemon game.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is. So it's less Pokemon with guns and more Ark with Pokemon. It is much more you spend your time in there building and chopping trees, getting stone and capturing these critters to then, work in your mines or chop down your trees. They seem happy to do it.
So it's like extreme capitalism simulator is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, maybe with Pokemon.
Okay.
And, I was kind of explaining it to my wife, and I was like going over the whole thing of like, people are really upset, the kind of close nature of the similarities between the Pokemon. I think a lot of Pokemon fans are upset because, they're arming Pokemon and you can kind of eat them or kill them and then kind of put them to work. And she was basically like, is that better than the dog fighting of Pokemon?
That's
where you
the thing, right?
Capture them to live a life of fighting in an arena forever.
But also, they live in a tiny ball, right? Like you're imprisoning them in something that fits in your pocket. You put some of the lucky ones, go to forced breeding camps, and the other ones are like in battles to the death for your entertainment and pleasure.
Well, look, it's not the difference between making subtext text, like the subtext in Pokemon almost already was text. It's more like taking the text and screaming it at full volume. These things will just kill each other. Here's some guns.
Do they actually die though, or do they get do they just get real tired and have to take a break for a little bit?
So to lower to capture them, you have to lower their health, and if you hit them a little too much, they get big X's on their eyes and just kind of fall to the side and
they're just drunk. It's fine.
I assume they're dead because they just kind of roll, like one just rolled into a river and flowed down the river. So there's no like bubbles coming out of their head. I think they're dead. I also think you can eat them. So
what do you think they taste like?
Do you get buffs?
I did not get any buffs. I assume they all taste like cotton candy, is what I assume they all taste like. Mm-hmm. I have a bunch of like, I don't know if the food gives you buffs. Probably it's a survival game, so at some point you probably get buffs from eating certain lamb balls or whatever they call. I have a bunch of lambs working my wool farm, and I got a bunch of cats mining, working in the mines right now. So each pal in the world has an attribute. Some are, or multiple attributes. Some are good at farming, mining, chopping trees. And so if you capture the right ones, you can put them, or they can, I was going to say put them to work. They can help you out at your base. If you kind of bring them in and release them into your base. You can only have a certain amount per base level working in there. So you want to go out and capture ones that'll aid the thing you need for your base. So you don't have to do it yourself. So you don't want to sit there crafting or chopping trees all day. You can find some pals that are good at chopping trees, and they'll do it for you.
So, but they can leave anytime they want, right? And you're paying them for their time?
They can leave anytime they want. We've never heard from the ones that leave, though. The ones that they never write back. Oddly enough,
weird.
They all go to the same farm upstate. It's very strange.
So it's always, we have a big celebratory dinner the day after, where there's a big feast, and we all dine on lamb chops after they leave the day after.
What? Oh wow, that's what's is the backstory that these are like genetically modified? Like, are you breeding these things to do your bidding? Is it like Satisfactory but with biotech?
So I haven't played a ton of it. I put a couple hours in. To tell you the funniest thing is, you start the game, you make your character, you start the game, you go into this world, there's just this person leaning up against the rock, and I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't remember what the quote is, but the vibe is, this person talks to you and is like, this goddamn pal's killed everybody I know. I killed everyone I know. And you just like go into this world that like, watch out. I don't know what's happening in this world. I don't know what the setup is.
Sounds like nothing good.
It also is in preview mode and it's early access, so it's it's pretty rough in spots. It's not a polished game. You're not going to confuse this for anything Pokemon aside from just looking at it, right? Like when you see, it's more Breath of the Wild than anything. You're climbing on cliffs with the kind of Breath of the Wild animation, but once you're moving around, you have left Pokemonville behind, and except for, again, the character designs, it is much more survival game. It is 100%.
It sounds like they made Spartacus, but you play the Romans and the slaves are Pokemon, is what I'm hearing.
I love you, Pikachu.
I don't know what's happening in the PAL world. I venture out every once in a while to go discover a new pal and get their health down and stick them in a ball and bring them back to my base to see what I can do. And then the game tells me to level up my base every once in a while. So far, again, pretty early on in it. I wanted to make sure I played some of it before whatever happens with Palworld. Like whatever.
I mean, what's happening is it's going to sell another 70,000 million copies.
Yeah, Microsoft just put a release out this morning about its Game Pass launch. Because, I don't know. I don't even know what the Steam sales are up to at this point. This time last week, it was over 7 million sold.
I think they're up to 12
Steam
now.
Yeah,
Jesus. But Microsoft said that it's been like over 7 million players just on Xbox as well.
At one point, I looked and like they were their peak player record on Steam was approaching the PUBG peak from like 2017.
Yeah,
which is crazy, right? Like that's
I think Microsoft said it was it's now taken the most played third-party game ever on.
Biggest third-party launch on Game Pass. They're saying.
Yeah. So, like, I think it was Game Freaks put out their statement that's like, we love all our Pokemon friends and we'll do whatever
we'll never
we have
give
to
them guns.
We'll do what we can to protect them. I've read too many think pieces now on where copyright stands and trademark and like what happens, and I'm at the point now where all of them just seem to agree that like, look, it's more complicated than just this thing looks like a Pokemon. You can't just Nintendo's not just going to launch a lawsuit because this thing looks like a Pokemon. They have to have actual IP theft, and that means a couple of different things. There's, trademark, copyright, mechanics, all those things. So, like, I don't know, will this game ever come down? This game's one of those weird things in the gaming industry that happens every once in a while that you're like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? There's obviously a demand in the market to give this genre collision enough oxygen to just explode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the survival game genre mixed with the cute Pokemon stuff apparently was just waiting to happen, and they capitalized on it.
I mean, I think I said this last week, but I think a lot of the ire from the Pokemon crowd is actually that somebody else went and made a better game.
Might
this
be
concept.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know what the next Pokemon Plus crossover is. Is it like dating simulators?
That's got to exist, right?
I mean, it's kind of already in there, but also, it can go deeper.
We had that game. It was called Viva Pinata.
Nice.
It's too good for this world.
It's one of those things I launched and I was like, I had heard so many different things about it. I wanted to try it. And I had shown it to my kids, and I said this last time, look, there's absolutely brand confusion. They were like, well, it's Pokemon. What? That's not Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, no, it's not. And so I don't know, like, would I play it with my kids? Maybe. It's like not, I thought it was going to be way darker where you're just like gutting the Pokemon in some like, Red Dead style scene with a knife. Apparently you can skin them and take their parts, but they don't show it. But I'll play a little bit more and see. I'm not a huge survival game person. I like playing them with you guys, like Sons of the Forest and Valheim and stuff, but I rarely just kind of stick with them on my own. We'll see. Palworld.
Is it shared? Is it like a shared experience? Can you play with multiple people, or is it just?
Yeah, it's weird though. The platform split is weird. Like last I checked, I don't think this has changed. Xbox could only do 4 players per game, but Steam could do 32.
Yeah,
which is a strange disparity.
I wonder if that'll change sooner than later with the amount of resources they might have now.
It's possible. So it sounds like the Xbox version is just quite a bit behind the Steam version for platform reasons.
Anyway, that's my take on Palworld so far. I know a lot of people are playing it out there. The numbers don't lie.
They're very high.
My weekly game group has been out of town, so we haven't got to play in a couple weeks, but it's like the group text is 80% Palworld right now. Interest in Palworld.
Are you going to get into Palworld?
I think we probably will play some Palworld when everybody's home.
You going to play it on the PC, I assume?
Yes, they're all... It's weird. It's interesting. They all have kids. They all there's family considerations. What platform should we play on? Stuff going on there. They all have Game Pass, but they still all have just gone and bought like multiple Steam copies.
Okay.
Because I think that's where all of the children want to play.
On Steam?
Yes.
They all want that bootleg Pokemon mod for it, which you can't get.
Also, there's something, Will, maybe you can appreciate this. It just occurred to me there's something very heartwarming as like a lapsed 90s PC only game player about the idea that young children want to play games on computers.
My daughter is like 90%. Like she plays a couple things on the Steam on the Switch, but and like plays Roblox on the iPad. But she's like these days the PC is the Roblox platform of choice because she likes the mouse and keyboard. So I feel like I've done something right at least.
feel like my kids don't know the difference because of the Steam Link or the Moonlight setup, where it's like they all just boot up into big picture mode and they just play the game from there. They only know they can't play the PC games when dad's on the PC. That's the big problem. Also, they know that they can't mess up my saves. That's the other problem. Though I did build that other Steam machine so they can mess up all their saves they want now. Just quickly here, I've been continuing with Sea of Stars, but Will, you finished Sea of Stars?
Yeah, I played it over the holidays in like a 7-day fury, basically.
Jeez.
Damn.
It's really good. It's a real, like, it's clearly made by people who love that era of JRPG, like the SNES and Genesis and all those.
Yeah, I'm really digging it. I had I mentioned it a couple of shows ago that I had a moment in the story where I was like, this is garbage, but now I'm back in. And I was telling you where I was before, and where would you estimate I am? Kind of.
I would guess, like, depending on how much. The thing is, you're toward the end of the game. There's a lot of side stuff you can choose to do. There's good payoff for actually doing it. Like, I went back and did it all after I powered through and beat the game the first time. It's you're probably like 3/4, even if you do all the side stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's you're at the point now where I would say like if you're playing KOTOR, you're after that big reveal when you can suddenly start looking at guides.
Okay.
Like you could look at guides now if you want and kind of use those to hit the last few things that you have to do. They also give good tools in game that help you so you don't have to do that if you don't want to.
For those listening, without spoiling anything, I have activated the Speedball network. That should probably be enough to let people know where I'm at. I really dig that game's vibes, and my kids are playing it, and my son's really, really invested in it, and there's some moments in that story I'm kind of worried about him getting up to that, like with some character moments that I'm like, look, if you need to talk about what happened to this character, like, it's okay. We can sit and talk.
It's nice because they're at an age now where like the feelings are real about things that happen in media that they're consuming, and like we have those talks a lot. It's good.
It's good. Talks through video games. That's what. If we need to talk about what happened to Aerith, well, we can talk about.
Well, Brad spoiled that one for me, so
There is no spoiling that.
It happened. He's not joking.
Truly happened.
I had no idea.
I quite literally spoiled that for him on a podcast sometime in the last, what would you say, 18 months?
4 years? I don't know, since we started the Tech Pod.
I guess. But
it was when Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, because I didn't have a PlayStation 1, so I never played the first one.
He legitimately made it well over 20 years not knowing about that.
That's incredible. Good for you.
Yeah. Well,
though I don't know. I personally, I'm not even saying this out of spoilers. So I'm not even sure how relevant those spoilers are anymore in terms of modern Final Fantasy.
We'll find out in a few months, right?
I guess so.
But I should mention real quick, I'm going to be streaming some FF7 Remake.
Hell yeah.
By the time people hear this, it will not have happened yet. If you want to come hang out and help me get back into that game, I kind of want to mainline the rest of that story before Rebirth comes out.
It was fun to stream. Like, that was a fun game to stream because people were people were having fun with it and kind of stringing me along in a good way.
All right. Very quickly here, or maybe not so quickly. Anything else you guys have? Alice, you play any more Infinite Wealth?
I played a lot of Infinite Wealth, actually.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of bootleg Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely out of the tutorial, though I have definitely not found all the modes yet, because I still have not unlocked the Animal Crossing mode in that game, the island thing, but I am now fully into the Sujimon minigame, which is the scumbag Pokemon battling system, because before you could just catalog them in the last Like a Dragon. Now you can actually battle them in mini games.
Oh God!
In teams of 3.
Yikes! That's
is this
a little bit like bum fights adjacent kind of thing.
It's in the neighborhood, especially considering anyone who is considered a Sujimon seems to lose all intelligence and agency the second they are brought in.
Is it fun?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's not my favorite battling minigame in one of these, but it's fun enough, and the story around it is really stupid, which I enjoy. But yeah, I mean, it's a very typical in these games style of, like, here is a side battling game. There are a lot of these. There was a tower defense game in 6. Like, there's a bunch of versions of this in all these. But also now I have a lot more of Hawaii opened up. I am running around. I am doing sub-stories. I know more about what's going on with Kiryu. I have not added any new members to my party yet, but those 3 have been serving me just fine. There's a lot of mini games and a lot of sub-stories. There's just a lot on that map, man.
This is a stupid question, but the Like a Dragon means that it's the RPG ones, not the beat-em-ups, right?
Well, so the short version of this is that in Japan, they were always called Like a Dragon. All of them.
Okay.
That was always the branding in Japan because, Yakuza has a very specific connotation to it. Even though all those characters were Yakuza, they were not part of the branding there. And then with the 7th one, which was Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon, they were like, we're just going to call them all Like a Dragon from now on.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
there was
like
actually
Biohazard.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like it kind of this. I actually just sort of put the pieces on this together. There was a big push when they brought the very first Yakuza over to America to kind of westernize it. Like they cast a bunch of big name actors in it.
Yes. Mark Hamill.
I think. Yes, like all kinds of people you
Michael
have heard
Madsen
of
was in it.
From movies are in that first Yakuza game. And I'm sure that was part of the rebrand there was like, hey, Westerners know what Yakuza means as like, Japanese mafioso.
And they were also really, if I remember correctly, they were really trying to frame it as Japan's GTA.
Yes,
which is
very it was definitely in that vein, or that's what they were going for, and then it super did not sell.
Yeah.
So this one's a turn-based thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
the last one was too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's good. I mean, the battling system is better, I think, in this one overall. It's just hitting all the right notes for me so far. I'm very invested in the story. It's swinging hard between its usual tones of deathly seriousness and the most cartoonish ridiculousness imaginable, and sometimes in the same scene. But I'm actually pretty impressed with how, because this is a new creative team. I mean, it is certainly some of the people who have worked on these recent games, but the people in charge of that studio now were not the people that were in charge like 4 or 5 years ago. So there is no lack of confidence and no shakiness, as far as I can tell, in terms of how they are approaching their story and their characters in this one.
It's bonkers that this is out so soon after The Man Who Erased His Name, because that was just November, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was an
ago.
older game that they had just recently brought over, though.
It wasn't that much older, though. It was in the last year, I think.
In Japan?
In Japan. I don't think they put that one out that long ago in Japan.
Oh, maybe I was thinking of the other one that came out last year.
Ishin?
Yes, that one was older. Right?
That's the older. Yeah, that one is from the PS3 360 era, I think.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So you're enjoying it?
I am. I'm very much into it.
All right. Infinite Wealth.
Gonna
keep going.
Still very good.
Let's get into some final thoughts here, maybe on Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
The Lost Crown. Now, again, spoiler warning. We're not going to hold back on some story stuff here or power stuff. So here's your spoiler warning for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Brad, you finished it.
Yes, I did finish it. I think I will hold back on some stuff in the last 3-4 hours of that story, because I really ended up liking that story way more than I thought I would.
Which parts?
Tell
me explicitly.
I mean, there are a couple of reveals that are quite good, honestly, that I actually would rather let people find out on their own. But I will just say, that thing reaches in a kind of an emotional crescendo that I was not expecting, because I was kind of down on how much story there was early on in that game when we talked about it a couple weeks ago. They really tie it together, I will say.
Yeah, I really like it. I think the stuff they do with the time travel and kind of weaving timelines together, it's very good. What did you think of the battles, the kind of boss battles near the end?
So, I mean, that's come at that from multiple angles. I am shockingly close to having 100% of that game. I've been spending all my time wringing just about every bit out of it I could. I kind of was so powerful by the end of the game. I just sort of the last two boss fights in particular were just whatever. I actually beat the last boss on the first try.
Because because of how much health you had, or because
I had a lot of health. A lot of health. I had all 5 potions. I think as many potions as you can have.
Yeah. I
had probably, I bet I had 13, 14 health bars by the end.
Sure.
I had the swords. The swords were maxed.
Right.
I was just kind of, but also the last boss fight, they kind of give you an assist at the end. They turn on.
When you go Super Saiyan?
That's an Athra Surge that you can, that's actually one I had been using that basically just makes you super fast and super powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
And they just turn that on permanently for the last, the third phase of the last boss fight, basically. So you can they want you to tear through that part, I think. That game's stupendous. Like, it really is just excellent. Like, I definitely will echo what you said last week. It's a little too buggy currently. Although they did fix, actually, like a side quest was broken for me that they seem to have fixed at some point. So, like, they are cleaning it up, and there need to be way more fast travel points in that thing.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to 100% that thing.
That's the thing. Like, so I finished all the side quests except for the urns one, like to collect all the urns, because there's a bajillion of those.
Yeah.
Although it actually turns out I'm only missing maybe like 8 of them.
Oh, the story urns for the plaque?
Yeah, the plaque, the fresco that you're completing throughout the game.
Oh, but you got all the lore items?
No, not all that.
Okay.
I did all the side quests. I did all the architects puzzles.
Yes.
I
did all the urns. I the only thing I didn't get were all the
urns.
What's that?
You did do all the urns? You finished
I did all
the
urns.
Jeez, man.
But that's a pretty easy one because there are like 2 in each area, right? Like
or 3,
least, yeah. Like navigating those areas weren't the lore items. I did not go back and get all of those.
Definitely did not. And you don't have to get all those to quote unquote 100%. Like to get the platinum on PS5, you don't have to get all the lore items, thankfully.
And I did not do the architect quest because I thought that was get everything. Yeah. Is that not everything? What treasures is she talking about? Where she's like, go get all my treasures throughout the. So
she got that like circle of stone slabs like spinning around her. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did you notice that those correspond to what the icons on the map as you do those puzzles?
No.
Oh, okay. No. You did some of those puzzles, right?
I did one or two of them were lit up when I went in there, and then
okay. Oh, those are the ones you did. So you didn't do all of those. Interesting.
Well, when I went in there, you're talking about the little. Oh, they correspond to the little platform puzzles where the chest comes out of the ground. Yes. Oh, okay. I did more of those after. I didn't realize those were connected to her.
I see. So those are her puzzles. You have to do all of those to light up her whole wheel and then open up her workshop, which really just gets you another health bar and some lore items.
So that's the part I thought was kind of a bummer. Was I wish I had been taking pictures of those puzzles as I was going through.
Extreme same, and I actually had to look up a guide to find out where they all were.
Yeah, at least they show them on the map when you're done.
Because those puzzles are arguably the coolest thing in that game, but they are very unrelated to the core action platforming gameplay of that game. They're much more like adventure game puzzles.
Totally.
And I actually wish they tutorialized the fact that you can interact with that world in that way a little better.
Yeah.
Because like each one of them is just this bespoke thing that they must have like written custom code for, you know what I mean? It's like you're not just throwing switches and like doing normal Prince of Persia stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think how to explain it without just.
Well, like the one that is like you just have to cut all the grass around it, right?
Yeah, so there's that one, or like did you do the tic-tac-toe one?
Yes, I did.
Like that's crazy. Like
you would not the chakram thing, or
your chakram is a circle.
Yeah,
and you have to throw your circle and make it hover in the exact right spot in the background to complete a tic-tac-toe game in the background, and then that triggers a thing. You know, it's like
I had to look up the solution to the one with the smashing snakes. The 2 snakes that are
yes. Yeah.
I did not understand how to solve that one.
I guessed what to do there, but then I had to look up where to go get that enemy from.
Okay,
like that one. There's like your only clue is there's a statue of this enemy in the background of the room, which is not conspicuous at all. That's the thing about these puzzles; they don't call your attention to them at all. But if you look, that statue in the background is like, oh, I've seen that enemy somewhere. Yeah. You literally have to go capture that enemy and carry them across the entire map. Bring them back to that room and drop them into a pit and make them get crushed by these pistons to finish that puzzle. Like it's weird stuff. Like
it's cool though. That you're right. Those are super cool. I think my favorite quote unquote puzzles are the platforming ones that for those Xerxes coins where you have to really do what feels like some mind bending platforming to land and retrieve the coin. That stuff makes you feel like a real ninja when you're done with it.
Yeah. Those things are pretty tricky. I did every one I came across. I didn't go looking for them because I also had like 35 Xerxes coins by the end of the game that I hadn't spent, even after I bought everything I wanted.
The Xerxes economy, especially if there's that vendor who only takes them. There's like nothing there I wanted to buy from that vendor.
I never bought a thing from that guy.
And like I had basically the 4 or 5 amulets I was working with kind of maxed out pretty early on. But yeah, but those are fun to do. Like, did you wind up using that teleport ability more in the bosses?
A bit, a little bit, not a ton.
That's
like I said, I was just so survivable by the end.
That what is it? The Master of the Seas boss, the guy who's the sailor,
the big. Oh wait, you're talking about the big heavy immortal guy? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember his was the attack that I had the most trouble staying out of. His special attack was he does this like horizontal spinning attack that you have to jump over, but then takes a quick second of a break and you have to get back over, but you have to be in the air long enough. And that was super fun once I figured out how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that game, I will say among Metroidvanias, that game, it's either this or the second Ori game has the most like fuck it attitude toward all of the previous constraints they have placed on you as a player.
Yeah.
Because by the time you get all the powers in this game, you are just flying over everything that used to be an obstacle. Like, they do not care anymore. Like, you finally get that grappling hook kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like, the grappling, every time you grapple, it also renews your air dash and double jump, so you literally can just never touch the ground again in areas where you can grapple.
Especially, you can grapple to enemies too, which is great.
Yes, that's the other thing, is you can pull a lot of enemies to you, and other, like, you can zip to all kinds of stuff. It's ridiculous.
But that being said, there are certain areas that are still a pain in the butt to traverse, and you're like the deserty one, like the one that's by the snake boss, which is like, I just don't feel like running through this area again. There's one puzzle in the forest that makes you like throw the chakram, warp around to make a clone to raise these different gates, and I never found a way around that. It's right next to a fast travel point, so I just had to do that puzzle like 8 different times. Yes, right.
Every time I pass through there. In the upper city, the big spiked pistons kind of things that go up and down that you platform over, there's like, you end up running back and forth through those over and over. It just gets old after you've platformed a thing a dozen times. You're like, man, just like a couple more fast travel spots so I didn't have to do this over and over.
It made me at some point definitely be like, I should just have a map and a guide open. Like, I don't want to run through this and then have to run back if I don't need to do it. But that game is awesome.
I'm
so glad you finished it.
It's fantastic. Another thing I have to commend them for, they get so much mileage out of clever art design in spots. Like, 80% of that game is just like what you would expect a game set in ancient Persia to look like. You know, it looks good, but like pretty conventional. But then there's that spot with the frozen sea.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Like, holy shit, man. Like, there's no tech there. Like, you know, it's a Prince of Persia game. Like, it plays around with time all over the place. That's the whole conceit of this mountain you're trapped on. But so this is not like, unless you consider environment design a spoiler, it's not a spoiler, but like, you get to a spot on the coast.
Hey, we're here for spoilers, man. That's the whole point.
Like, this level on the coast is set in the middle of this raging naval battle, except everything is frozen in time. Yeah. So there's like ships, you're like platforming over a ship that is literally like exploding in half in freeze frame. There are like bodies flying everywhere. You run on the ocean, like the ocean itself becomes the ground. Like, you know what I mean? Like big tidal wave is like a hill you run up, you know? It's like, there's no special tech there, you know? It's just, hey, they decided to make all the art assets in this area look like the ocean that you're running on, but the effect of it is like so incredibly cool. I just like sat there slack-jawed for a minute when I got to that area.
That area is very cool. And I think I mentioned this last time, but I think my favorite enemy, I don't know if you have encountered it again, the one that runs in reverse. They're in the desert area. All their animations are reversed. They're like pulling the spear back towards them.
Yes. Yeah.
Those guys are very cool. Will, have you played this?
This completely flew under the radar for me. I didn't. Okay. I haven't heard anything about it, but you like listening to you guys talk about it has kind of convinced me that I should probably pick this up.
Yeah, like if you're down for a Metroidvania, this is an extremely good one.
I love a Metroidvania, and I also I just love content tourisming through a game that 1,000 people worked on. Because I assume I assume you haven't rolled credits yet, so you don't know this isn't the normal 45-minute Ubisoft credit.
No, I did finish it. The credits are very long, but I think the core team on this actually was quite small. Like it has the feel of a smaller scale kind of game. I mean, it's very actually. I was like 23 hours when I finished it or something. It's not short, but it has the feel of a small scope of development, I guess I would say.
For me, I'm much more likely to play something that's 10 or 20 hours, just because I can't spend 60 hours playing a lot of RPGs at this point. Yeah, and this sounds compelling.
Yeah, this felt a little bit on the long side for this type of game, but it never quite wore out its welcome.
Does it have the combat tightness of something like the Valkyries and God of War or any of that?
That was the last thing I was waiting to say is this is just a movement and combat game. This is an all-timer in the genre. Just the feel of the double jump, the air dash, the grappling hook, the combos, the combat is extremely nuanced. There's tons of combos you can do. Just it's incredibly tight and really satisfying to play.
When I finally got around to playing God of War, the first one, I haven't really gotten into Ragnarok yet. I was so taken by how fun it felt to play the game, like just the motions. And this seems like a similar kind of sitch.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great.
I think, Brad, like you said, the power curve is really fun in this one. Like you just wind up in this state of, like, I feel like when you start out, you're kind of dancing with every enemy, and by the end, you don't even care. You're just zipping through, putting enemies in your pocket, basically, if they're annoying. Alex, you think you're going back to it, or are you done?
There's just too many other things in front of me right now. Like, I like it, but I think I just didn't quite like it as much as you guys did, and there's just other things I want to be playing right now.
It's good. It's a fun one.
Yeah, I might go get the platinum. I don't know. I definitely was not planning to until I finished it and looked at my map, and I was like, I'm really not missing that much.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I didn't look at the trophies. There's no, like, beat it in 60 minutes thing.
No, nothing like that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you could just mop up everything in your post-game save.
Okay. My last question for you, Brad, because I brought this up, I think, initially, was like, do you think there'll be more content for this or DLC?
Nah.
Do you know and what happened to that character who seemed to be in love with the main antagonist? The one that's like the underground, like death worshipping, mask wearing.
Oh, I literally was going to ask if there was one character I was going to ask what happened to. It was absolutely the lady with the mask. I have no idea.
That's the one thing that's just like, does that cut content? What happened to this character?
Because you kill 2 or 3 of the immortals. Well, I won't run through the whole thing, but everybody else is accounted for, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Everybody else on your squad that you went in there with is accounted for. I think Sargon makes a comment about her being a casualty at some point during the ending, I want to say.
Oh, really? I don't know if I caught that.
Something along those lines, and I was like, wait a minute, did she die off screen? Like, what happened there?
You find a note that is like, she's not happy with Sargon because Sargon's taking attention away from...
Yes, she like worships Varum, the head of the crew, right? I found that. Yeah, I found that note. Like I said, like they characterize everybody really well. I was like kind of shocked how invested I was in the story by the end of it.
So DLC, you know.
Did you ever, last thing I'm going to ask, did you ever run to the very beginning of the game again before, like they kind of don't open that big main gate until right at the end?
Yeah, I once I got the double jump, I think I tried to go back there.
Okay, because you can go all the way to the start of like the map, where you enter the area,
and you run through and then come out the other side again.
Yes.
So
did it play the entire opening cutscene for you again when you came back through there?
Oh, no.
Okay, that has to have been a bug then.
Wait, I don't think so. No, I think it just like blew to white, and then he comes out the other side again.
Yeah, no, that happened to me. But then when I ran back to the right to go back into the map proper.
Oh,
you remember the entire cutscene where all like 7 of them file in and they're like poking around, and then they decide, we're going to split up. I'm going east. You guys go together. It played that entire thing again for me when I crossed whatever invisible trigger entering the main map again. And at first I thought they were playing around with time again. I was like, am I going to watch the events of the intro again, except something different's going to happen this time? But no, it just like, because then it put me into the first combat tutorial again after that.
Oh no, wait, you kept all your powers.
But I had all my powers and I just killed the first enemy they throw at you as a tutorial. Like, it was bizarre. Like I said, it's a little buggy.
Yeah, it's a little buggy.
Like I had that side quest break. There was one room in particular that literally every time I walked through there, Sargon had some unrelated line of dialogue that he started saying, and it would subtitle every time I walked through.
Oh yeah, it's the one with the chandeliers, right?
Yeah, so he says Orod, which is the big dude with the hammer.
Yeah,
like he starts saying some line about some character from a different part of the game every time you go in there.
That's clearly known shippable, that kind of thing.
Yes, it's a bit jank.
My worst bug was I threw a wall and was trapped inside a wall, and my last save was like 15 minutes ago.
Very good.
Yeah,
so the pirate captain side quest, you remember that one to go get the bird?
Yeah.
Every time I accepted that quest from him, it would not get me out of like talking to captain stance, where it would put me back in the world where I could move, and it literally would just stop accepting controller input.
Oh boy.
And I looked it up on Reddit. Like, every platform has this problem. People figured out on the PS5, if you turn your controller off and back on, then it will unstick the quest and you can keep going.
Oof.
It's a little rough, but the game's got a lot of heart.
A lot of heart. That captain quest, I'll say also, I wish they would just remove the X's when you got the treasure for the captain quest, because like if you're trying to pick up all those pieces of treasure and you don't do it right away, remembering which ones you got and didn't get kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I went to the first one and I had already gotten it apparently, so I just didn't bother even looking at the others. That was kind of dumb.
Fun game though, like great game. I think it's super cool. And I look forward to see if they do anything more in that vein. Though it's kind of, I don't know where you really go in the story from there. It's a good one though.
Yes, very much so.
And they make good on some of the setup there. They do the other thing. I'll just end on this. They do the other thing I really love, since we're not going to talk about Suicide Squad, but Rocksteady did it with Batman, is Sargon takes like cosmetic damage throughout the course of the tale. So like from the beginning to the end, by the end he's scraped and bruised and stabbed and is all torn up. And I always like that in Batman, when Batman's suit would get all torn up by the end of the game. Fun stuff. That's Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. And that's going to probably wrap up our talk on that one. All right. I'm going to take another break here. We'll come back and we're going to talk about the state, nothing less than the state of the video game industry. Stick around. And we are back. And it's time to talk news. And dominating the news, not surprisingly, continue with 2024. Is that the year we're in? Let me just check my watch. 2024's continued contraction in the video game space. Brad Shoemaker, more news out there.
Feels very telling that I am opening videogamelayoffs.com as we are starting this segment, because they do have that good running tally. The bloodletting continues. Largely at Microsoft this week. They are letting go already have let go 8% of the overall, I guess, Microsoft gaming division. Is that what we're calling it? Not just the Xbox division, but people who work in games for Xbox, Game Pass, etc. At Microsoft and at Activision Blizzard. 1,900 people.
It's a lot of people.
Yes, it is. And I'm sure anyone and everyone could have predicted that after a merger of that size, like some redundancies were going to happen. But coming as quickly off of the heels of all these other rounds of layoffs at other big companies as it does, it's obviously pretty eyebrow-raising.
I mean, coming off the heels of the merger, coming right around the same time Microsoft announced that for the first time it'd become a $3 trillion company, there's a lot of factors that make this particular round of layoffs especially jarring. Yeah.
Like a fair number of their gaming numbers are up significantly, but I think that's just a result of the merger. They're able to say our engagement is up by 49% or whatever it is. But of course it is, because they just brought a massive new division under their umbrella. So I don't know if that's quite the same thing, but yeah.
Well, the other thing is that the vibe after the first round of Microsoft layoffs last year was that, at least this is done.
Yeah, that's
among the people I talked to.
I mean, the same thing with like Google, right? Did Facebook do more layoffs this year? All the big tech layoffs last year, they were all 5-figure numbers of layoffs. And you looked at that and were like, well, this is awful, but surely that's it with numbers like these. But then here we are with the big tech companies doing the same thing again this year.
I don't remember, did GameSpot have layoffs? I was at Future at Maximum PC in 2001 when the world collapsed, the big bad time before last now, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny. We talked about that on the Ramblecast this week, actually, the .com bubble bursting. And the media layoffs then. Those all happened right before I got to GameSpot.
So it was very much a time where at first it was we got to do this to save the business, right? And then they watched the executives, the people in charge that were talk to the stock people were oh wow, our stock price really went up when we did all these layoffs. And also we got rid of 10% of people that were probably the underperforming 10%. This is a win-win. And we're still cranking out 12, 13 magazines a year on all these teams, even though we cut 20% of the staff. What if we tried again? And they kind of got real happy and addicted about it to the point that we did, I think, 7 rounds of layoffs at Future between 2001 and 2003. And I'm going to go and tell you, there's some downstream consequences that people don't think about on large scale layoffs. And the big one is that people who are kind of looking over their shoulder because they're afraid they're the next one under the hatchet, it turns out they don't do great work compared to people who are secure and comfortable in their jobs. And also everybody who's good eventually starts to leave because they like want to go someplace where they don't have to look over their shoulder. So like these seem like, oh, harmless. We got the good stock bump layoffs, but there's going to be lasting consequences to culture and like the product that comes out of all of these companies that keep going back to the layoff well over and over and over again. Whether it's Google or Facebook or Microsoft. I think actually Facebook, I don't think has done another. Maybe they did one more small thing.
Yeah, I think it was just Google and Microsoft so far.
Yeah. It's bad. Layoffs are bad. This is a hot take coming in here.
And just the sheer volume of them. I mean, it's like, every single week now, it feels like we're talking about at least some of these, and like just these numbers, like when you start putting them together into a larger number, like just the video game industry is big. It's not that big.
But like Google spent $2 billion on severance last year.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a substantial amount of money. And the other thing is there's knock-on effects. Like one of the things that came out of this Microsoft layoff is that presumably a big chunk of the teams that do physical media and placement into channel is going away, right? And it doesn't mean that like disc copies of games are going to disappear, but it does mean that there will be fewer of them and they'll be harder to find. We're already seeing like Best Buy doesn't have a disc section really anymore. I think we'll see that continue to shrink at Target and GameStop and the other places you buy video games in person. But like there's also the publishing apparatus starts to shrink, and we saw this. So I spent the last 3 years working at Stray Bombay, which is a small, venture funded indie first person shooter developer making a multiplayer game. So like we did this on hard mode. Making multiplayer games is hard. Making first person shooters is expensive and difficult, and it was not. We knew it was going to be a difficult path, but we also were working in a budget range that kind of doesn't exist right now, right? Like the thing that's happened with all of the layoffs and the stuff, we'll talk about Embracer in a minute, but like the publishers that used to do games in the kind of say 3 or 5 to maybe up to $20 million on the high end budgets didn't sign games last year for the most part. Like there were a handful here and there, but like when you went to DICE and you went to GDC, usually you go and meet people and you're like, okay, here's our demo. We have either a beautiful corner, which is like some art and like it's like a vibe check for your pitch game, or you build like a working prototype that's like a vertical slice. Like the idea is you give them a cut through what the experience of the game is playing, but it's probably pretty limited. And usually you pitch those at GDC or DICE, and you pitch them at GDC, and then sometime like April or May you sign a deal and you get a few $100,000 to a couple $1 million depending on the budget you're looking at to like build that out and hit the first like build to a first milestone, right? And it became clear after GDC, well, a couple things happened. One, there's the war in Ukraine, which is having some downstream consequences on finance. The interest rates went up so that there wasn't easy, like interest rates were low to the point that borrowing money was basically free for a really long time. And that meant people were willing to take some higher risks because, they didn't cost them very much compared to like a 7% interest rate. And what happened is people just stopped signing deals and everybody got nervous. And then in May, Embracer announced that they didn't get that $2 billion deal. And it turns out, you may not be aware of this, but Embracer bought almost all of the publishers that work in that what's kind of like the AA/expensive indie space.
They carved out basically the entire middle of the industry.
Yeah, and so when we were like we went through this process, like we were pitching Game 2 last year, and we went through the process. We just took stuff to DICE, had lots of good meetings. People were really excited, really enthusiastic, and then by the time GDC came around, they were like, "Well, we're kind of going to wait and see right now on everything." And when we talk, the thing that everybody doesn't, I mean, I guess people realize this, but indies all are gossips. So everybody's talking to everybody else. And it's like, yeah, man, I'm not getting anything either. And you end up in a situation, and then the Embracer stuff hits, and they, like, it turns out 3 of the 5 studios, publishers you're talking to are Embracer studios. And they're all like, no, we can't spend any money now. It came down from corporate, and of course they're laying everybody off now. We're seeing those Embracer studio layoffs, and it's like all of the 10 to 20 to up to maybe $30 games, like your Sea of Starses and your like these games that are high production and have a lot of art and have a lot of people working on them, need money to be able to build. Typically you finance, you fund a certain amount with VC, you fund a certain amount with the amount of with the proceeds from your previous title if you're an existing studio. And then you get toward the end and you're like, okay, we need to bring a publishing partner. We're gonna either, we're gonna take this demo, we're gonna get a publishing partner, and they're gonna help us get it across the finish line in exchange for money on the back end. Or you shut down and go away, or you sell to somebody. And like we're gonna see a lot of small, like from 10 to 80 person studios that raised money to get started and don't have like runway to get across the finish line. They're going to be in a real nasty situation this year, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't know. Obviously, every game is different. Every studio is different. Every development team is different. But just for people out there, because I feel like the numbers get really weird when we talk about money that's coming in. Microsoft being a $3 trillion company. Like in a double A space. Is $20 million a lot of funding, or you burn through that and like that's nothing?
Well, okay, so think about if you're working in the United States and most of your people live on the coasts where stuff's expensive, your median salary is probably $150K, right? Between artists and engineers. And if you're engineer heavy, it's going to be higher. If you're artist heavy, it's going to be a little probably around there. Like so multiply that by the number of people that work there, and then add 30% for the HR costs, for health insurance and all that stuff. And if you have an office, add another 10 or 20 grand a month to that, depending on where you are and whether it's like a full size office or it's just a place that people can come have meetings and stuff, which is much more popular now. And then think about software costs and multiply $1,000 per artist per year, add $1,000 per artist per year for Maya, Substance and Photoshop and all the stuff that they need. Maybe a little bit more than that, actually. And then think about, like, maybe depending on the size of the studio, if you're using Perforce, it can be that like Perforce can get really expensive.
What's that? Is that distribution or
Perforce
build?
Is source control, source and asset control.
Okay.
You can use Git, which is a little bit cheaper, and Git LFS, but it's jankier, and games people tend to like Perforce if they can afford it. And then like you don't generally have a whole lot of engine costs these days up front, but they'll take that on the back end, which means that instead of Valve taking their 30% and you paying Epic a couple of percent plus a flat fee for your game license, you're going to probably give them another 3 to 5% depending on what kind of deal you sign. So it
hardware,
gets expensive.
I assume, too. Computers.
You get $2,000 worth of computers per person minimum.
Servers and
the
development.
The servers. If you do cloud servers, that can be like 10 grand a month, right?
Jeez, really?
If you're like just for your dev servers, just to be clear.
Okay.
For your production servers, you can hit hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month with like a relatively small game if you're doing like dedicated servers that you host, which if you're trying to do a live game, like games as a service type thing, you kind of have to do, because if you give people access to the servers, then they're going to hack the servers and like all your live game incentive shit goes away. Okay. So yeah, like it 20 million isn't out of the question. Like there's a sweet spot around like that caps out around 10, but then like you also have to think about what your marketing costs are. So if you're not actually building community and marketing all the way through that development period, if you're like we announced and started marketing essentially when we announced 6 months before we came into early access, your expenses, like you can spend $500,000 on marketing easily and see absolutely nothing back for it. Right. It's a complete crapshoot whether your marketing budget lands. So people tend to do like more organic stuff and like, they post dev diaries and they build a Discord and you post stuff on TikTok and you have a small dedicated predictable cost that hopefully grows gradually over time and isn't like you're not buying bus ads on a $8 million game.
Right.
I assume that all very much tied to then how long is it taking to develop this game, right? that burn rate per year times 5 years, or 10 years, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So you figure spending, if you have 3 people, 4 people, you're paying $30,000 a month on payroll and HR stuff, and then you have a few $1,000s of servers. But if you're a big indie, if you're a Double Fine size, for example, you have 80 people working there. That's a phenomenal amount of money every month, and you have to have something coming in to counterbalance that. So if you, for example, if you have a milestone with your publisher or your platform, if you signed a Game Pass deal or something like that, and you're in danger of missing that, then you're going to have to cut heads because you're not going to be able to afford payroll after when you miss the milestone, right? Like there's a ton of pressure. Like the thing that people don't realize is money is time, and what you're buying with money is time. And there's all sorts of ways to buy more time with the same amount of money. For example, like doing hiring outsourcing out of Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia or someplace like that. It's like you can kind of multiply your art budget by having a couple of really talented people inside and hiring like tech artists or stuff like that, and then getting the kind of core prop stuff built externally, or buying it off marketplaces and then running it through Houdini to make it look like it's not off the marketplace, right?
What is it running it through Houdini?
Houdini's a tech artist tool. It's a thing that lets you, like, you can basically, like, instead of making 88,000 different shrubs to put in your fields, you make one shrub and then you use Houdini to like run shader programs on it and stuff like that, so that the one shrub it's the same asset in the game, but it looks different every time you see it.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It does other stuff too.
Make some variants and so you don't have to manually, like a speed tree, but for generalized assets.
It's a toolbox for tech artists to make games less samey. I'm doing a bad tech artists right now screaming at their radios.
I can take a Pokemon, put it into Houdini, and then I can get a bunch of different Pokemon.
Just to be clear, it's a highly technical thing. Like this is the thing that the tech artists are in high demand, because it's a hard thing. There's not that many people that can do like there's a bunch of different parts of it too. It's like some of it's skeletal rigging, some of it's building VFX. Like I'm grossly generalizing here, so please don't yell at me. But it's not like you just load it up and then hit the filter button and it comes out the other end. It's like you have to be smart, and otherwise you'll make something that doesn't that won't run on your Xbox Series S, right?
So right, yes, right, okay, that makes sense to me. So I guess my initial question is, or I guess what I was trying to get at is, when things are like, companies raise $4 million on Kickstarter, right? And like, we're gonna make a game in this tier. There's probably some outside funding, or most definitely, like, I don't know what the scale of those types of games are compared to, this game has an $80 million budget, and this game has a $20 or $10 million budget.
So it's almost impossible to know, other than to look at the team size and multiply that team size by like the average median salary for the region that the team's in. Yeah. The general rule of thumb is that 2D stuff is cheaper than 3D stuff, right? Because 2D art, you don't have to have as many technical artists doing rigging and stuff like that on everything that moves in the game. But like, you can do 3D stuff on a budget if you're working in a setting that there are readily available assets, like game ready assets. Like, this is the thing that Unreal 5 does, right? Unreal 5 lets you take pretty much anything and copy it into the game. And if some dumbass scanned a pot on Sketchfab and it has 150 million triangles on it, Unreal 5 will kind of look at it and it'll munge it down, and it'll make it something that you can run at game speed. But like, everything doesn't work like that, and it's always more complicated than you think it's going to be. So, for example, the Anacrusis, we set it in a like kind of funky 70s setting, right? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of funky 70s furniture and like props and science fiction prop design and stuff like that in marketplaces. So we ended up building everything either internally or with the help of some outsourcers. And it's expensive. It's way like if we had made the exact same game and set it in Eastern Europe or the Middle East, you just go to the Unreal Marketplace and start downloading stuff, and like you can get a pretty good prototype going for practically nothing.
That's really interesting. I never quite thought about that before. Like the more popular the genre, the more easily somebody else can make something in that genre or environment, which is just leads to things just being saturated in that same exact look.
Yeah, it's how you end up with PUBG looking like every other, like looking like Stalker, looking like every other game that's set in Eastern Europe or Western Russia.
Are prefab assets just kind of a matter of course these days, like just extremely common accepted practice at this point? Because there's definitely still a stigma around that stuff in the player base. You know, there's still like accusations of asset flip and stuff like that on a lot of games on Steam. But like I gather I assume that's just becoming a thing that people do very regularly at this point, right?
This is like anything else. It's a tool, right? You can do it badly, you can do it well. If you do it well, people don't realize it, and it's not like it's a secret. But if you do it badly, then then you end up with a game that looks like every single other game in a $2 price range. The one that like. There's a lot of stuff that people just fundamentally don't understand. So somebody complained on a YouTube video once about our game. They're like, this fire in this game is just a bunch of textures. It's just flat textures floating in space. And I'm like, dog, every fire in every game you've ever played is just textures floating in space. There's no volumetric fire in pretty much it. I mean, there's always exceptions, but everybody does fire the same way, because if you do fire the not same way, it's really expensive and your frame rate goes to shit, and then people complain about bad frame rates. So yeah, it's like there's a tendency on YouTube, no knocks against YouTube, but there's a tendency among people who talk about video games on YouTube to make broad sweeping pronouncements about things about which they know very little, that generate a lot of laughter when you watch those videos. And Alex is nodding his head over there. Not to Alex,
I've seen a few of those videos.
Yeah.
So like, just going back to like the state that we're in now and the situation that we have looking at us going forward. Like the thing I've heard anecdotally over and over again is the thing you mentioned about like people assuming, or making a lot of decisions around when interest rates were very low, those chickens coming home to roost, and them realizing that like some of those things did not pan out. Is this really just a case of a mass short-sightedness? Because nobody with any real sense would have ever thought that these interest rates were going to remain this way forever. That money was just going to remain this way in perpetuity. I don't know that necessarily it was going to shoot up the way that it did, but at the same time, it feels like, and especially if you're a company like Microsoft or one of these other AAA publishers, can the decisions that they were making be that catastrophic that now they are having to slaw off this much of their workforce over and over and over again just to meet these, I guess, target goals for growth that they aren't going to meet if they don't make these hasty cuts?
So interest rates are one part of it. Another part is that we're now into the time when they were making projections based on and promises essentially to the market based on the real good numbers that we had when nobody left their house for 2 years.
Right.
Consumer spending was way up the first 18 months of the pandemic, something like that.
Yeah, so even though Microsoft had good numbers, like I saw an analysis yesterday that said basically Microsoft had good numbers last year, but compared to the growth that they were projecting in 2022 for this year, they're going to miss the mark. And like part of that is that Game Pass has a different kind of Palworld is a notable exception that's going to like drive the numbers for Game Pass up, the engagement numbers for Game Pass up really in a good way for Microsoft. But like, I don't know. I feel like I'm spending a little less time on Game Pass now than I was during the pandemic because I have less time to spend on games because I leave the house every once in a while. Not too often.
Yeah.
But it's a different. The market is different, and like it's a double whammy. The other thing that happens that's worth mentioning is every single console cycle, when you reach the point that you're like equidistant between the start of the generation and the start of the next generation, the market usually goes to shit for reasons that I don't exactly understand.
Yeah, I mean, but this is also a special case too, because these consoles launched under those original conditions we were just talking about. The pandemic starting, you know, like people being at home all the time, but also not necessarily spending a lot of like supply chain issues really kneecap their abilities to get those consoles out in the way that they did in the last generation. And the main thing I'm coming away from this with a lot of the conversations I've had with people who work in development is that whatever the general console cycle may be, or the game cycle may be around these platforms, the reality is we are looking at a desert that is not like the average for that stuff over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's been my question going into this is what does 2025 and 26 look like? What do the launches of the next consoles look like, which are not actually that far away, you know?
And with the length of a dev cycle now, like a short, we launched into early access in 2 years and then did 2 years of early access with like 60 updates with the Anacrusis, right? So it's basically 3 years and change, almost 4 years. We're not in a place like, if the new consoles are launching in 4 years and the games that were signed last year were the games that were going to be delayed and be the launch games for the next range of consoles, the games that are going to be signed at DICE next month, whenever the podcast comes out, February and GDC would be the games that are going to launch on these consoles. And right now we're not going to I think we're not going to see a whole lot of stuff in the $10, $20, $30 price range just because all of those publishers aren't signing deals. The platforms aren't signing deals. The kind of easy money from Game Pass and Epic and the other places that you were signing kind of broad sweeping publishing style deals that weren't necessarily publishing deals don't seem to be happening as much. And it's a real bummer. Like it's because it's the place that the most experimentation continues to happen in the market.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Or it's the place where you see like the nichiest fan service. Like I think Sea of Stars is a $40 game, which is the kind of high end of this area. But like that's a game that's not going to exist at a $60 or $70 price point. And it's branched out and grown beyond that initial genre just because it's remarkable. But like typically those games are fan service games that like people who like old JRPGs kind of pick up and play and they don't break out. The other thing that I think is really important, and this is something my boss at Maximum PC told me on my first day there, which I joked at the time it would have been nice if he told me the day before I signed the papers rather than the day after, but is that in that industry in media, and the same as applies for games, is you can be sacked at any given moment.
Oh yeah.
For something that is completely beyond your control. It's not your fault. It's not because you did a bad job. It's not because your game didn't kick ass. It's not because the work that you were doing wasn't amazing. It's because somebody in another part of the building put the wrong number in a spreadsheet 2 years in the past. And the unfortunate thing is, if you choose to go into this line of work, you have to be prepared for that. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it has nothing to do, like you can't take that on your chin. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we're talking about like this middle budget stuff versus the current AAA space, I feel like the thing we're talking about with these middle budget games and sort of the small to mid budget games is that there is a real potential for like loss if the investments don't come through. Like we're talking about these studios basically burning through all their capital and their resources. At the AAA level, I feel like what we're actually talking about here more is shortness of growth. It's not about that, like, Microsoft isn't going to start going into the red heavily if they keep these 1,900 workers on. They're just not going to meet their growth targets. And I feel like that's the thing that needs to be differentiated, and the thing that actually is maybe driving a lot of this conversation is that we are still now in this cult of perpetual growth, and like that shit just cannot sustain forever. It can't.
That's capitalism, baby.
Yeah.
like we're talking about a bigger issue than anything to do with just video games.
Yeah.
That is absolutely like the goal for most small and mid-sized publishers, even up to like old Harmonix and Double Fine and stuff like that, was to get to make another game. Like you want to sell enough copies of your game that you get to make another copy
of another game, baby.
And for a long, long time, that meant you release a game, and it doesn't have to be a blockbuster. It just has to sell, and you've built an audience because like if you look at the Supergiant path, it's a good example of this. Like Bastion was a hit, just to be clear, but it wasn't like a breakout, like change the world, 25 million copies sold kind of hit. They released 4 games, and the 4th game they'd had enough of an audience build on each one that the 4th one exploded, and like 25 million people have played Hades, and like it's a genre defining game. But that it's not like it was an overnight success. That was a 10-year path for them,
right?
That culminated in them applying everything they learned up until that point on this one title, and that's the dream, right? Like that's the overnight success. This is what's going to end up happening is a lot of these mid-sized studios are just going to go away. The ones that had, break even games that would have signed an easy publishing deal 5 years ago are just going to disappear. And we're going to, those people either leave the industry or they'll go back to work for Call of Duty or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen to a lot of them, but it's a loss for games.
Yeah.
And it's a disappointment. It's a disappointing place to be.
It's something we were talking about last week with the last round of layoffs we were talking about last week, which is to say that, like, there just aren't that many openings out there. Like, there are still a lot of studios open, there are a lot of publishers open, but, like, the number of openings they have is not that great, and certainly not enough to counterbalance the sheer number of losses, which is going to leave a lot of people who are pretty early on in their careers essentially having to pivot out of games because there just is no path forward for them for the next year or two, bare minimum. And nobody can survive that long.
Sorry, I was shocked at the number of people who have been in the industry for a long time on my Twitter feed last week, quite publicly saying, you know what, I think it might be time for me to get out of games.
Yeah.
Some of them were people who were laid off last week. In at least one case, I think it was somebody who still had a job, but was still looking at all this going on. Actually, I think they were kind of in the, like, if I get laid off, that's it for me kind of space.
Yeah.
But
because
even,
at this point, I imagine every developer is now putting together a list of things they are going to do if this happens to them.
Like even people that are double-digit numbers of years into their career are looking at all this and saying, like, you know what, this shit might not be worth this level of instability and uncertainty at this point.
And the other thing is, like, especially if you're working in a bigger studio, like, it requires travel. Like you're like, the longer you've been at this, you have kids in high school or middle school or something, you're not going to pick them up and move them across the country if you can avoid it. Like it's one of the nice things about that AA space is a lot of those studios were virtual, and they were teams that were virtual from the beginning because they started during the pandemic. And there are, you can, assuming you're time zone compatible in some way, you can pick up and work from wherever you happen to be. So yeah, it's I don't know what the outcome is. My guess is what happens is as those studios that are sitting there looking at the amount of payroll, the number of weeks or months of payroll they have left, start to get to the end, and are midway into these cycles and realizing they're not going to make it to the end. I think we're going to see platforms probably writing checks and buying up a bunch of these mid-sized studios, because, like, if you think about, it's what happened with the big studios, the big AAA studios on the last gen, right? You're starting 10 or when did Naughty Dog get bought by Sony? Like 15 years ago? 20 years ago now?
God, when was that?
It's been a while.
Early PS2, late PS. Yeah, 20 years, something like that.
But I guess as soon as the business gets hinky, the platforms come in and write a check, and then all of a sudden they got a workhorse in-house that can just keep cranking out the thing that they do. And these mid-tier games are important for stuff like really important for stuff like Game Pass, just for filling in the gaps in the schedule and making sure there's always something fresh there. But also, like when they break out, then they really move the needle.
I do wonder if, in this current state, if it's a double whammy of available. I mean, I don't know how much money Microsoft has in the bank. I assume tons, but are they willing to go on another buying spree? Or, Sony just got Bungie, and it's kind of going through that acquisition, and that I wonder if an Embracer, we talked a little bit about Embracer there. Are they willing to embrace more, or are they like, there's
no more embracing for a
while. Embracer has no money.
Yeah, embracing off the table.
So the people who are scooping up a lot of these studios, I wonder if they're done for a bit, and it's a double whammy of the money's not there to borrow at a the free money's not there to just take those bets in like they were a year or two ago. And also the money's not there to take a loan out to keep a studio afloat or borrow again.
So I would think about the people that have stuff to lose by having gaps in the release calendar, right? So if you're looking at 2026, 2027, 2028, and your Game Pass, you're worried about games contracting in this space because you look at your Dredges and you they've done really well on games that live in this like $10 to $30 space and making them available on Game Pass and it feeling like to people who are subscribing that they're getting a real value. Hey, I paid my $15 and I got to play Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars I don't think is on Game Pass, but
no, it is. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, yeah. So right, I got to pay what would have been a $40 RPG and I got my $15 worth this month. So I'm going to keep that sub going. I think that we'll see the platforms, not necessarily the publishers, pick up. But again, this works for them because they're able to cherry pick the things that they think are the biggest chances of success. So they pick the top 1, 2, 3, 5, 10%, and then the other 90% are just cutting features and hoping to ship.
Right, and then I guess the big problem there is like a Microsoft or a Sony when they then cut a percentage, even 2 or 3%. That's thousands of people, and then those. That consolidation means basically, I shouldn't generalize, but my worry with consolidation is always you reshuffle the deck and that studio might not be the studio it was in 3 years. I mean, look what's happening with Blizzard on a large scale or Activision Blizzard, because that's a huge company. I'm sure they looked at their books and was like, this was always going to happen. There are redundancies here, but now there are it was almost near 2,000 people laid off.
1,900.
Yeah. So like, when a big company absorbs other companies, there's always something that's going to happen. And then when the ink goes, like you were saying, Alex, it doesn't hit the right growth mark. Cuts happen down the line and work their way up. At least my impression of it. Again, I'm not inside Microsoft.
The thing about games, though, that I think a lot of people don't understand is that everything's so interconnected in a game. Like if I was at Maximum PC and they said, "Oh, you got to cut 25% of the headcount," I'm like, "Okay, well, we're not going to post anything on the website anymore, right? That's a cut I can make. It doesn't really affect the rest of the business. If I'm making a Metroidvania and I suddenly have to lay off half of my environment team, then that means I don't have." That means that all of the weapon progression and all of the skills progression for the back half of the game, like either you cut off the end of the game and move the end up, or like you can't just cut willy-nilly. You have to be like, it's not like removing headcount means, I just don't ship a feature. I mean, I guess on Gears you ship 3 multiplayer modes instead of 5 multiplayer modes, but like still it's not simple. It's not simple like, we're not going to ship a PowerPoint version this year.
I wonder inside places like Microsoft, and Microsoft is the example because they seem to have gobbled up a lot of studios over the course of the last 10 years. Do you then disband, do you do that 25% layoff, stop the game they're working on and put those people on other projects to help out in other areas? That seems to be sometimes what you hear is like, hey, that game is no longer happening and these people got put on and support to get the big bets, out the door in time. I don't know, the whole thing. It's a big business. It is, monetarily, it is the games industry is making the most money it has ever made before, right? What does that mean when it comes to what is happening on releases and employees? Well, I mean, it looks like it's shit right now in terms of employee stuff. And, last year was a good year for releases, but I think, Alex, you mentioned it too, and you guys all said, we'll see what happens in 2 years, right?
Yeah. I honestly think in the next 2 years, like the shape of the industry, not necessarily the way the products are or the way they're coming out, but the actual shape of the workforce and like who is putting out what is going to be radically different and not necessarily for the best.
I think that's right.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine it not, like with all of this.
Well, and like there's elephants, right? Like the Game Pass is really great for players. It's still totally unclear whether it's a good thing for studios, right?
It seems to very much vary from game to game. Like there are some where the upfront money actually does them a big favor, and there are some where it's like, this actually may have fucked up our long tail in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, but like we launched on Game Pass and immediately had a whole bunch more players than we expected. which probably wasn't great for us. Like we were rough. We launched rough and could have used. Like it would have been awesome to launch a little quieter and then have that big mass of players come in once we'd had a couple of months of iteration on the initial feedback from players. So it is a double-edged sword, and that Game Pass market is really fickle, because like their only commitment to you is that they downloaded a couple of gigs, or maybe didn't even do that. Maybe they just launched it on xCloud, and and so they're not going to push through to find out, like, unless they know that the Pokemon eventually get guns and they're pretty stoked about murdering people with Pokemon. They're probably not going to push through 12 hours of nonsense to get to the Pokemon gun part.
Do you think early access has been a big plus for developers to try and monetize earlier in the dev cycle?
We got to that's a enormous conversation. Like, if you want to, it's complicated. The TLDR is that your early access launch on Steam is your launch, right? And Valve says that that's not the case, and acts like that's not the case. And there's a couple of real good examples where it's absolutely not the case. But like, if I were making a game right now and I was looking at early access, I would launch on like Humble and Itch or something like that.
If you're really looking for a quieter, softer launch,
if you actually want to iterate with players in a community, I would do launch real small and then roll into full 1.0 on Steam. I would make people work for it, because you're just, the reasons why it's bad are complicated and not worth getting into, but like everything from user reviews to like on Game Pass, on Xbox, they do game preview now, which is their version of early access. And I would guess roughly 90% of the audience isn't aware that program exists.
That's what Palworld is in game preview on Game Pass.
Yeah, but so if you're going to launch onto game preview on Xbox, even if you're going to launch onto Steam, you need to have a certain amount of polish done. You're not like you should not think that you can come in and get feedback that is meaningful and helpful if like your sound effects aren't done, or you know, if it like what would have flown 10 years ago on early access or green light on Steam isn't going to work today.
Right. Okay. And in something like game preview, you're still subject to cert requirements, just like finished games, right? They're
limited. It's a little different, but yes.
But
you don't have to have achievements and stuff. Like there's some stuff they'll give you a pass on.
Right. But you're not going to iterate like you could on Steam, where you can just throw a new build up whenever you feel like it.
And honestly, you can't iterate on Steam anymore either, in the same way that you used to be able to, because people are so, like, the expectation is that if you're paying money for it, it's good. And like you can get around that on Itch and Humble. People there have to work for it a little bit more, and they understand, like they tend to be a little more understanding, is my understanding.
Well, thanks for that block of survey of the general games industry. There's a couple of other things before we leave Microsoft that I want to touch on. We touched on the kind of story out there that as part of these layoffs and as part of this contraction, it'll affect the physical media part of Microsoft. Brad, do you want to kind of sum that up again? We talked about it a little bit.
That's what Windows Central is reporting, that the quote from Jez Corden is, Microsoft has also shut down departments dedicated to bringing Xbox games to physical retail. But that's about the extent. Yeah. He also cites the leaks from the antitrust stuff about the supposed mid-gen diskless Xbox Series X refresh that may or may not actually come out. But if it does, that obviously would line up with a decrease in effort to bring games to physical.
Given that the retailers are reducing space dedicated to physical media, it totally makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, Best Buy is like specifically one of the big ones, because they are just straight up taking like Blu-rays out of the stores now.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess movies have led games quite a bit on physical media going away, but games seem to be rapidly following. Like, I am kind of shocked it took as long as it did for digital to become so dominant, but
well, it's been like a generation and a half at this point, because Xbox One, PS4 was basically the beginning of you can get all your games digitally if you want.
Yeah, so very conspicuously, it was Crackdown 2 and Halo Reach on the 360 were the first ones that were like, hey, $50 game. It was still 50 then. No, it was 60 then, right?
It was 60 then.
Yeah, right. But it was like, hey, full retail games that normally only come out on disc, now you can just buy it on Xbox Live. Here, like, download Halo Reach day one and just buy it digitally. oops, somebody pulled it off our download servers before it came out, but let's not talk about that. But you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It was kind of late 360, mid-late 360 that they started experimenting with that, and then all of last generation. But like, there's a quote from Daniel Ahmad, who is a pretty prolific games analyst on Twitter, that like he says there are certain AAA games with 80% plus digital share on Xbox these days. So
I believe it.
We're finally getting into that tipping point where like the physical sales on that, it's way more than a rounding error, but it's like getting into that territory of becoming less and less critical.
Does Comcast still have a 1 terabyte bandwidth limit?
I think so in a lot of places. I haven't been on Comcast in so long, I'm not sure, but
yeah, that seems to me like the big gate for as games get bigger and I mean, if you're a dedicated Call of Duty player for a while there, you could blow your limit there in no time flat with a bad patch or two.
Not only the limit, speeds are not great across this great country of ours, and especially in other territories. So
I'd call them actively bad, in fact, comparatively.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like when I play with my brothers and stuff, it's like, hey, make sure your thing's updating tonight because we're going to play a Call of Duty or something tomorrow, right? So like, make sure you did it tonight. Yeah, that's I do not look forward to the day that only a special edition physical release is the physical release you get, right? Like, hey, this is the kind of $100 special edition. It comes with an art book and a physical disc, which I feel like is kind of where we're moving.
Or no physical disc. Like, we kind of crossed that bridge already, right? Like,
in the
collector's editions already come out with no disc in them.
Yeah.
What a world.
The lack of physical media worries me. I mean, look, the people who sail the high seas work that stuff out for archivists, but it's yeah.
But they shouldn't have to,
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of in the same place, It's like you pretty much can always count on the community to keep things alive, but that shouldn't be the only way it happens.
Right. Yeah, I'm a pretty much digital. My lifestyle is mostly digital, but I like that there are physical things out there. I also think, like we talked about this, was it on the Ramblecast or wherever? We talked about it really recently. All the collateral that would come with a physical release is also very interesting. Box art and printed discs and all the other things. All right, so the other bit of Microsoft news here. Brad, you stuck this in the news doc as well. What was this Blizzard game that got canceled? I had to go and click your refresher link here to even remember what this was.
It was Odyssey. They announced it like a year, almost 2 years ago to the day. They announced it publicly. Although according to Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, it's been in development for like 6 years.
Wow.
As part of this big Microsoft layoff, part of that was a big reshuffle at Blizzard. Like, Mike Ibarra is out as head of Blizzard. They say that they are going to name a new head of Blizzard shortly. But they have canceled Odyssey, which was the game that on January 25th, 2022, they started recruiting for publicly, which Schreier describes it as a Minecraft or Rust-like, very much in the tree-punching vein, but with the Blizzard level of polish that you would expect was kind of the pitch that he gives for what that project was supposed to be. But yeah, like I said, Blizzard, I mean, the blog post is still live from about 2 years ago, where they came out and said, like, hey, we're building a new IP, we're doing a survival game. Like, I remember us talking about this because this key art of these kids with a backpack and a bicycle looking at floating castles is familiar. But they straight up were like, hey, we need people to come help us build this new survival thing we're working on. That now has been canceled.
They announced Joanna Ferries as the new president of Blizzard.
Oh, did that just happen today?
It was the last night, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's another Jason Schreier and Dina Bass article. Former Call of Duty NFL executive.
At the same time?
No, different times,
okay.
I believe. Yeah. Of course, the link I found is paywalled, so I have no idea. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Yeah. So the Schreier, excuse me, the Schreier story blames a lot of this on technology. Like, they were just trying, like, mandated to use an internal engine that was not suited for the type of game that they were trying to build, but still, like, it is a very conspicuous example of a major project getting cut. We've got a couple more layoff stories I'll just throw on the pile here since we're talking about it.
Might as well.
Because there's another game cancellation involved here. So Eidos Montreal, which is now owned by Embracer, has cut about 100 people. But part of the reporting around that, which is also from Bloomberg, is that they had a new Deus Ex game in development at Eidos Montreal that has now been canceled as part of these layoffs.
Boo.
Which, like, Deus Ex is a name, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
I guess I just always assumed there was always some kind of Deus Ex thing bubbling up somewhere.
Yeah, and it's been a while since, Mankind Divided, I think was the last one. Like that was kind of mid-late last gen, so we're kind of due for something else, but it seems like that probably is going to be on the back burner. I mean, that's probably the case for a bunch of Embracer-backed stuff right now. And then Sega of America also is laying off, I believe it's around 60 people, which is like 10% of their domestic staff.
Is that the publisher or is that game dev teams or both?
I don't know how much development they do in America. There's probably some, but I would guess that's a lot of like American operations type staff. Parent company being in Japan, of course. But like these project cancellations coming out and alongside these layoffs is pretty eye-opening to me, because not only are people losing their jobs, but like we keep saying, there's just going to be fewer games going forward. In some cases, it's not, hey, get this game done with 60% of the people you thought you were going to have. It's just, hey, we're not doing this game anymore.
Right. This game is not going to come out. And I think, like you said, Will, the development now are the games of the 3-4 years from now, right?
Yeah, like, well, I mean, that Odyssey game, it seems like maybe the development of 10 years from now, but yeah, it takes time. Like if Microsoft calls me today and it's like, hey, we want a game for this Christmas, I'm like, well, you should have asked me 2 years ago, man.
Yeah, build a time machine.
Yeah, I mean, you can like, there are some things you can, like, I don't want to pick on a particular genre, but there are games that are more amenable to that kind of thing. But you're not going to get like a massive content heavy game in a short 10 or 12 month cycle.
Right. All right. The games industry. I'm going to call it troubled at this point. Messy. Haven't had a great week of news in a while for the state of the industry.
I could go for one right about now.
Like I'm trying to think about what would even constitute a week of great news.
Well, no layoffs would be nice.
Back?
Well, yeah.
But
I mean,
no layoffs, I guess, would be a good start.
That's a no news is good news kind of thing. I'm talking like what would be a very pronouncedly positive development that could happen.
Big giant dev fund, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Like that's what I mean. Like it's been so long since something in that vein even happened. I have a hard time envisioning it.
I mean, there are smaller stories that pop up about people still getting funding, but they are much fewer and further between than they used to be, I feel like, a couple of years ago, where they'd be like, this person's starting a studio, this person's starting a studio. And they mostly seem to be started by people who have left very successful AAA studios.
Well, and the other thing to note is that like a lot of those were VC funded, and the VC community is kind of, I don't want to say fad driven, because that's not exactly right, but there's moments, and everybody at a big venture firm feels like they need to have a bet in whatever the new space is, whether it's VR or metaverse or crypto or video games. And once they have their bet, then they're good, and they don't make any more bets. So like, once all those are done, and that moment's passed, right? Like that easy money's gone with the interest rates and all that stuff. Right. So yeah, it's a winter's coming, I guess, is what the venture people always say.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant about like what would good news even look like. I meant like what is possible to happen in this current environment.
We need a Sneak King. We need Burger King to get back into video games.
Now you're talking.
Get fast food money in there.
There was a story, I was just looking for it, but some of the Volition people went on to go form Shapeshifter Games. That's like positive there, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like I said, you don't get these stories as much as I feel like you used to get these stories.
Yeah. I mean, like, I started to say, like your Stardew Valleys and Lethal Companies and Palworlds are like, hey, look, people are still finding success even with little teams and so forth. But like that really, even to me, even that just highlights what a hit-driven landscape it is, Like success feels kind of... It's the word I'm looking for. I mean, nobody can predict that kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
like nobody can. Very fickle. Yes, like nobody can bank on finding that kind of success or any kind of success, even if they make an amazing game.
Like we saw, even people who have been in the industry, I'll say, I genuinely take Larian at their word when they did not think Baldur's Gate 3 was going to take off like the way it did. Right? Like that's a thing that I feel like they probably hoped, but probably did not realize how many people, especially haven't been in early access for that long, or what that game was going to do. I bet the Palworld people are shitting their pants. Like,
there's going to be a book in it, right? It's like the same thing like early PUBG. Like when PUBG hit, there were 35 people that worked at that studio or something. It was an incredibly tiny place, and it blew up, and suddenly it was the biggest game in the world. Palworld has the same kind of. I don't know how many people are working at the Palworld studio, but it feels small. And it's like it's similar vibe.
It was very small and very inexperienced by all accounts.
Yeah. Wow. People are still making games. Some of those games, I don't know how to transition here, but bear with me. Some of those games are attempting to release games like Suicide Squad are trying to come out, and they're doing their best and maybe not always hitting the mark. Brad, what is going on with Suicide Squad's early launch?
Yeah, Suicide Squad is coming out for everybody on Friday. Finally. Kill the Justice League. Perhaps you've heard of it. After a very long development period, but it did have an early access period for the $100 edition that people ponied up for. It's supposed to be 72 hours early. The game launched at the beginning of that 3-day early access window, and they very quickly had to pull it.
Man.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Because there was a problem where it is a live service game, so I'm sure they're checking against servers, and any manner of issues can occur there when you're trying to track progress locally and remotely and so forth. But there was an issue where people were logging into the game for the first time in this early access period. It was immediately flagging them as having finished the story. Like it was essentially, yes, it was essentially flagging their campaign progress as you have played through this campaign. I'm not aware like what that might lock you out of necessarily. Like, it might be possible to still play through the campaign again as normal, or like some games in that vein, maybe you lose access to certain things after the first time you play through the campaign. At any rate, they very quickly pulled the game back down.
I think some of the stories I read at the time that it was happening were saying that like it's actually unlocking weird things for players, like post-game stuff in ways that it should not.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of an achievement popping.
Yeah, no.
Well, that's a bad bug.
Yes, definitely a very bumpy launch. They had to pull it down, which again was in the middle of a period of time they had guaranteed to people who spend extra money on it.
Wait, did they not have the normal disclaimer? Like usually when you buy one of those, it's like, hey, servers are probably going to go down during this time. We don't want to hear anything about it. It's like, we're going to do the best we can. And you're going to have the chance to play, but it might not work out the way that you're hoping.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a conspicuous enough problem that happened early enough in the launch that it's kind of hard to just be like, hey, it's just the cost of doing business. And B, this game is already having to thread like 3 successive needles with how against it a large part of the player base is reflexively.
Yeah. Kind of feels like video game punching bag at this point.
Right. Yeah. Like it's the hostility out there toward this game is pretty intense at this point.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. So I don't think there was much they could do but pull it down and get it fixed, which they did. They've now granted $20 of Luther coins.
Wow, welcome to post-capitalism, I guess. I don't know. It's give me my Luther coins, I'll be okay.
People afflicted by this, or people that played early, have now they've received $20 of in-game currency as a make good.
Is it really Luther coins, Brad?
Yes, that's.
Oh God, I don't even know where to go with this.
I don't even
know. Like this. I mean,
just enjoy your Luther coins and be okay.
Why not Lexbucks? Lexbucks is so much better. Coins. Oh God.
You're right. Lexbucks is better. I don't know. Maybe that was taken already.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was in-game currency in this guy. I didn't know any. Okay.
Dude, yeah. The punching bag thing.
I mean, that's exactly where it comes in. Is like preview footage out there showing like 6 different types of upgrade currency in this game and stuff like that. Oh. Like this game, we may have said this before. I mean, this game just feels like it's kind of the last one in the door of the live service era. At a time when people have 100,000% turned on live service as a concept, unless they're already bought into one of the like 4 games that actually made it.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of having played a bunch of live service games. I have thoughts on this that are complicated and hard. Like doing live service, like you look at somebody who does live service good and somebody who does live service bad, and like Fortnite is remarkable because they balance and they are constantly riding the line between too much and too little and keeping the power curve growing and like keeping the game fun. It's hard to keep a game fun in an ongoing nature. The big problem for me is that there's just not enough time, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're in a situation where you're like you're never going to play 2 of these games. Because each one is a 40-hour a week commitment to keep up with the things that you want to keep up with.
or at least I'll just add on to that. Well, like probably invest fully in two of them.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
you might be a tourist or like whatever the term is, like cruise in and out of them, but like your main, right?
Yeah, you can't taste you can't taste the forbidden fruits of both Destiny and Fortnite.
That's right.
And Apex Legends all at the same time.
How many season passes can one person possibly fill out?
One, it turns out, unless you're streaming. Yeah, this is.
It's almost like those season passes are balanced in such a way to exclude the possibility of playing other live service games.
Well, but also at the same time, if you're making a game that you want streamers to play, so they do your marketing for you, and streamers play 10 or 12 hours a day, you have to have an enormous content treadmill that engages those people, but then also like somebody that like Vinny's son can dip into and play an hour a couple of times a week and still also feel like he's getting something out of it. So it's a hard problem. It's a real problem that's hard for reasons that I think a lot of people probably don't think about.
So Suicide Squad will be out for realsy. State of the server seemed to be fixed at this point. That's right, Brad?
I haven't seen any further. I hadn't looked at their Twitter account today, but at last I checked, things seem to be running pretty smoothly.
I'll say this. I went looking around for reviews, and Video Game Chronicles had one up.
Video Games Chronicle first. I think there's one other outlet that I was unfamiliar with that I don't have in front of me right now that also ran a review. But Video Games Chronicle is out with a 4 out of 5 for that game today.
Yeah.
The headline of a much better game than we expected.
Yeah. They also said it was like one of the best looking games they've seen in a while.
Yes, I kind of want to look at it just for graphics reasons now after they said that. I mean, but like if you look at their list of cons, repetitive missions is number 1, which sounds like the style of game for sure. Also, this is awfully quick to get a review out, but who knows?
Very quick for considering that servers didn't sound like they were even in a state to play it, right? Like, so I don't know. The other con there, I'll just add, Brad, I think it was like microtransactions, right? So,
I mean, it is one of those.
Things that don't sit well usually with the general crowd.
Can I get a banana costume for King Shark? Can he look like a giant, like 15-foot tall banana or a hot dog or something?
Is that guy's name? King Shark?
Shark King, King Shark,
something
King
like Shark.
That.
Yeah.
Is it really
King Shark?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
If they're doing it right? If they've done it correctly, if DC is letting them make a banana suit, I hope.
Right. I want Harley Quinn to have like her little drone thing to have Snoop in it talking to her the whole time.
Can I
just make it terrible, make it real gross.
Just give me the animated series skins.
Oh yeah,
for Harley Quinn. All right, and finally here, not to be outdone with being forgotten to the sands of time. There's a Prince of Persia reference, I guess. The Switch 2 news continues, trickles in.
Yeah, that's actually a big part of, there's not a whole lot of new information here, but it's actually the slow trickle of Switch 2 leaks that's kind of what's interesting to me here, because it's starting to remind me of the annual iPhone cycle. And kind of reminds me of how different things are now than when the Switch 1 came out, although I think parts of the Switch 1 concept did leak prior to the unveil for that thing. But this is full-on iPhone territory of like every week or two now, we're getting another detail about what the Switch 2 is going to be. This week, the screen's going to be 8 inches.
8-inch LCD.
8-inch LCD, yeah. That had been reported previously that they will not be launching with an OLED screen.
I love that they're thinking they're going to sell enough Switch 2s, which I think is probably right, that like it's impacting supply chain in such a way that like the supply chain analysts can look at what is being projected to be manufactured at a screen level and be like, oh yeah, this looks like a Switch 2 kind of. This is the right size and volume for Switch 2.
Yeah, I to be fair, I guess leak is not always the universal term for this kind of thing. Some of it is also analysis. But it's a significantly bigger screen than the Switch 1, which is like what, 6.2?
It's bigger than the OLED Steam Deck even, which is like 7.4 or 7.5 or something like that.
Yeah, like the Switch OLED is also a 7-inch. Like that kind of makes me wonder what I am more interested in what the resolution of the screen is going to be. Like, does it need to be 1080p at that size?
They'll probably do the same thing handheld docked, right? Where they do it down. Yeah, I don't know. Will they do 1080p? I hope. You don't think so? You're shaking your head, Will.
No, they're going to render lower resolution because it's NVIDIA hardware in Switches, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to render lower resolution and then DLSS it up to upscale, so you don't notice that it's being upscaled, and you'll get longer battery life, and like it's using the upscaling so that you render low res render up and then have like twice the battery life.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to put 1080p on a handheld ever. I don't think. I mean, the screen might be, but rendering at 1080p is crazy.
That's what I'm saying. It's not going to be native 1080p rendered, but what the native res of the screen is, I'm curious. 720p at 8 inches seems pretty low.
It's like 1280 by 800 on the OLED Steam Deck, I think, which is a little bit higher, a little bit weird aspect ratio. It like text is readable. I think it's I don't know. We'll see. I hope that they do something better with font rendering on the lower resolution versions is my request.
I'm still so curious, and I know I could be a wackadoo here, but I am so curious what they have going on inside between a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 to internally to make sure they don't wind up in a Wii and a Wii U situation where, they went through that entire process. There are so many Switches sold. They want to put a Switch 2 in people's hands. How do you differentiate enough where you feel like this is a completely new platform and bring the people who all bought Switches, what was it, 7 years ago now? How old is the Switch?
Pushing 7.
10.
No, 7 years in March.
7?
I thought it was like 8 or 9. But
2017.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's a pretty long. That's a good length for a console. Bring all those Switch people on board who are. I feel like the Switch was again the Wii version of like everybody's got one, right? Casual players and hardcore players and people who buy a console every 15 years bought a Switch. I know a lot of parents who bought Switches for their kids, right? Like it's the thing they bought.
Animal Crossing during the pandemic sold so many Switches.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and this is anecdotal, parentally, people who are not finger on the pulse of the video game, nobody's talking about a Switch 2 yet, but I also feel like those people are going to be like, do I need a Switch 2? And then that's the sell, right?
I wonder if they go forward and back, right? I wonder if your Switch 2 games work on the Switch 1 and it just is 30 frames a second instead of 60
I think that may happen on case-by-case bases, but like that'll be ports to the old.
Yeah.
Like I highly doubt there's going to be one SKU coming out that runs on both platforms in any case.
Like it's not going to be a Series XS situation where the same games are coming out and one just runs at a lower clip on the other. Like I don't think Nintendo's going to truck with that. And honestly, I don't think any Switch 1 games are going to just automatically work on a Switch 2. Or, I mean, the other way around. I don't think any Switch 2 games are going to automatically work on a Switch 1. I don't think that's going to happen at all.
Yeah, so I am with you. I mean, there may be limited cases. I mean, they did do that with the Wii U to the Switch. Like, Breath of the Wild came out on Wii U and Switch at the same time.
But that was launch.
But yes, that was a launch game, and those were distinctly different versions of the game, right? So, like, I assume the same thing would happen here, where it's like, oh, hey, we're launching with a new Mario. Also, by the way, you can still get it on the Switch. It just doesn't look as good. But that's not going to be every game. That's going to be like, hey, we did the work to make this run on both.
I'm with you, Will. That I had that same thought, right? Like it's just a different product, right? Is it a Switch Pro at that point, or is it a Switch 2, right? And signs are we talked about this before. Signs are pointing hardware-wise probably more towards a Switch 2 cutoff.
Conceptually, very much a Switch 2. I mean, remember there was a Switch Pro that was in development that they canceled mid-pandemic. Right, yeah. That was the refresh. That was the Switch Pro. But I would not be shocked, Will, if it wound up being that. I know it sounds weird, but it's probably not going to happen. But Nintendo is a weird company. And I just feel like they got burned in that Wii U world. When
Jimmy Fallon picked up the Wii U and is like, oh, is this a thing I buy to hook up to my Wii? And they fucking just died. They killed the entire thing right there.
I mean, I think that was about 80-90% a problem of branding and marketing.
Well,
and not the capabilities of the system.
But that's the problem is they're selling to customers who don't listen to this podcast, right? Yeah. They sold a bazillion Switches to normal ass humans.
Well, yes and no.
It goes all the way back to the SNES, right?
Right, but they're not necessarily selling to those people at launch, though. They're selling to people like us at launch. Like they're selling to people who have to have the new thing for the first year or two.
Yeah.
Because they still have that 100 whatever million install base of the Switch to sell games to people who are not looking to upgrade.
Here's the real thing: is that like as much as I agree that the branding is a huge part of why the Wii U was an abject failure because it just did not explain at all what you were buying. But the other thing is, and I think this is much more obvious in retrospect, the Wii U was clearly a bridge console. Like, it was clearly a thing that was a sketch of an idea they had of this portable and home console hybrid thing, but they didn't have the hook for it yet.
Yeah.
And then they got it.
There. I extremely agree. The Wii U just conceptually is a pretty half-baked concept.
So but you have the Switch now, which is a very baked concept, and all you have to do is tell them this is the next Switch. If you literally call this thing Switch 2 and you say this is a more powerful version of the thing you already know, every consumer knows what that means at the very least. Whether they choose to buy in or not, there's none of that confusion that the Wii U just abjectly suffered from.
But okay, so I'm buying your Super Switch idea here, Alex. But let me pitch this. Let me pitch this other idea, which is that when you upscale existing Nintendo's house art style for the first party games, which seems like it's mostly what they care about, is real good and upscales real nice.
Yeah.
So then, what if it is the Switch 4K? What if it's a 4K, a thing you can plug in your TV and play Tears of the Kingdom at 60 hertz 4K, and they just sell another Zelda game? It just lets them reset and resell all the first person franchises again.
Now you've created for yourself the Apple problem of when do you cut off the old Switch? At what point do you finally say, okay, here's a game that will not run on your Switch 1? But is that in 5 years? How do you communicate that to people?
But that is also an extremely Nintendo thing to do with expansion pack stuff and splitting the market, right? I mean, maybe they've learned those lessons and don't do it. I just looked up sales of the Wii U, Wii, and Switch. The Wii U sold 13.5 million units. The Wii was 101 million units, and the Switch has surpassed combined totals for both of those things. I mean, the Switch is extremely popular. It begs the question of how do you roll this out? And we're calling it the Switch 2. That's what just people are calling it. There's no official word that they'll call it the Switch 2. They would be pretty dumb to call it the Switch 2. Maybe they'll call it the Super Switch or something.
The Super Switch actually isn't bad.
It's an extremely un-Nintendo-like thing to call something a Switch 2. I cannot see them doing that.
So maybe they'll figure out maybe they'll figure out the marketing. I just I'm leaving the door open a crack, and I know people will think, and I'm glad I poisoned your brain with the thought, Will, that possibly this will be a Super Switch that plays Breath of the Wild, the same Breath of the Wild you maybe bought, better than the other games. Either way, I think there's going to be, we'll probably all agree, a transitional period there that'll take a while, where stuff will probably come out on the Switch and the new Switch for a little bit there.
You know what I want? I want 40 hertz mode on the screen. That's all I give a shit about, really.
That would be nice.
I want 40 hertz for single player stuff so that I get good, so it feels smooth and doesn't eat battery. That's what, if they do that, I'm happy. I'll buy it.
Or maybe the cost, I don't know how these things go, but maybe the R&D costs on this thing and the parts on it, maybe their bet is not to outpace the Switch sales. Maybe it's to supplement Switch sales in a way that they're working on their next big, huge thing. Maybe. I know Nintendo likes making money like every corporation, but maybe it's not to eclipse Switch sales. From all things we've heard, and they're all rumors at this point, it's pretty similar form factor to the Switch, right? They're not doing.
I don't think they're radically changing the nature of what that system is. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
I wonder if they'll
a fold-out top screen or anything.
No,
it's going to look like a Switch with better controllers, hopefully.
Yeah, you think Joy-Cons will be not compatible?
I would not expect anything to be compatible unless
whole new system,
unless we're proven otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't know. They've sold a lot of they kept the accessories with the Wii U, which kind of is what bit them.
Right. What if they resold all those accessories again?
Yeah. I don't know. If you already have the accessories, it's easier buy-in. And I have 3 Switches in this house. I don't know about you, Vinny.
They could make a more kind of egalitarian move. I mean, Microsoft did that. That was kind of shocking when Microsoft's like, hey, your Xbox One controllers still work on the new consoles.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of.
I feel in the new era, once Microsoft started upscaling old games for you, all bets are off on what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there are mechanical compatibility issues, do the rails on a Joy-Con fit with what they want to do on the housing of a Switch 2?
Form factor of the dock.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The screen's bigger, so how does that nest in there? But how about the Pro? The Pro controller, hey, just make the Pro controller work. I've got 2 of those things. That was like a $70 controller.
No, they have to do a new one because where are you going to put the 4C buttons? You have to have that's the upgrade we're all waiting for.
They're putting the C stick on there as well.
They're taking an analog stick off is what they're going to do.
How about this? 3 prongs, Vinny. That's it. 3 prongs, 3 triggers each prong.
Yes.
That's all we've ever wanted.
And a better kickstand.
Yeah.
That's the Switch 2 promise. Well, that Raise your hand, I guess, virtually. Is this thing launching by September?
Those are the persistent rumors.
Yeah.
Sometime
do you think
this
we
year.
see this summer?
Yeah, they'll
Picture
definitely
of
have
this
to unveil it at least, I'd say, like minimum 3 to 6 months ahead of time.
Okay. I'm kind of curious. I'm curious to see what the heck is going
You're
on.
You're going to buy one, Vinny. You know where you land on this. You
I'm
definitely
going to buy one. There will absolutely be one in my house. Nintendo's one of those wild card companies that always does things a little left field. And like, what is the weird thing they're going to do on the Switch successor here, considering the Switch 2 is maybe the Switch 1 is maybe one of their best-selling consoles, and at least I don't know, maybe ever.
You can
Probably
tear
ever,
it
right?
out of the box, you fold it up, it makes a fishing pole.
I mean, you got it.
Cardboard. Cardboard is big.
Yeah.
It plays Super Nintendo games. It's got a slot for the cart on the dock.
Now we're talking.
But not the same Super Nintendo games you could play on the Switch 1. For reasons that are completely arcane and indecipherable. It's a different set of Super Nintendo games, and the ones that you could play before only work on the Switch 1.
Actually, you put in the cart and it just downloads a ROM to the Switch. It doesn't even actually play off the cart. It just verifies the ROM.
Somehow it only plays Wonder Swan games? It's fucking weird, man.
That is going to do it for the news. Thanks again, Will Smith, for adding some much needed industry experience and thought to that conversation.
I'm here to bring your bummers all day long, Vinny.
No, it's
you
good.
don't bring the bummers. You let us understand the bummers.
Yes. Like, there are some things in this industry that do not change and some things that seem to be in constant flux. That the cost of making a game for me is one of those things I have never quite been able to pin down, and it sounds like for good reason because it's all over the place.
Yeah.
So thanks for having that conversation with me. I never understand when the thing is like, it sold 1 million copies. I'm like, I don't know, does it make its money back? Is that good?
If it sold 1 million copies and it didn't make its money back, somebody made some real bad choices along the way.
Well, there are some pretty bad people in games dev, so I don't know. I don't know what to say. That's gonna do it for the news. We do have emails here. Brad, do you want to do like one email?
Sure.
Let's do a quick one.
A couple of very quick ones. Rob from Detroit. Is a Katamari a kaiju?
Wow.
No.
Alex, I feel like you're probably the authority here.
It is not. A kaiju is a living being. A Katamari is in and of itself not alive. It is probably closer to a Gundam than a kaiju.
Wow.
Well, because it is being piloted.
Is Mechagodzilla a kaiju then?
That is getting into some very existential territory that I'm not prepared for right now, but I'm going to say that spiritually, Mechagodzilla is more of a kaiju than a mecha because there is still a self-piloting consciousness there.
Okay.
Wait, hang on. Sorry, is Mechagodzilla self-aware?
God, it's been a while since I watched any of those Mechagodzilla movies. My recollection is that it is not just someone in Mechagodzilla's head piloting it.
In the Monarch time frame, I think they take King Ghidorah's soul, one of his head's essences, and jam it in there.
Yeah, so there is something there functioning and thinking at least on a machine level. So I'm going to say that is not a mecha.
Brad, next email.
Travis in Fargo. My go-to favorite snack is a handheld fried egg with a little ketchup on it. Do you have any oddball favorite snacks? I don't even have an answer for this question. I just want to know how the fuck you make a handheld fried egg.
That's slime.
How do you
put? There's an oil or butter in the pan, right? That the egg is going to be a little slimy.
When you bite into it, you're going to get the goo all in your hand. It's going to be like, and it gets, as soon as it hits air, it gets all congealed and sticky. It's not.
My favorite handheld snack is pudding. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Do you use your finger in the cup like Ron DeSantis?
That's right. Yeah, it's an old pudding fingers.
No,
I'm with you. I don't know. Like fried egg is maybe one of the least handheld snacks I can think of. It's not fun to hold, first of all, and then yes, once you bite into it, it only gets worse.
Do you think he meant to say sandwich and just forgot the sandwich in there? And it was like you put it between two pieces. Fried egg sandwich is great. I'm on board with a fried egg sandwich, but just like
very explicitly says handheld fried egg.
Well,
okay.
Hold on, but in some parts of the country, when you ask for a fried egg, doesn't it come solid? Isn't that a New York thing?
That's over easy's that got a skim on the top.
Yeah, that's like an over easy. Or over medium, I guess.
Yeah, over medium.
Yeah, but the yolk still runs.
Yes.
Okay.
Medium tends to be a more solid yolk. Over easy is definitely supposed to still be kind of runny.
I started to say, isn't there over hard eggs? And yes, there is. I Googled it.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Over hard is like fully chalky, shitty, dried out yolk.
I don't think I've ever heard a person order over hard ever.
Look, I try not to judge people for their choices, and I'm not going to yuck somebody's yums, but I'm going to look at you sideways, and we're not going to be friends if you order over hard around me.
If you're ordering over hard, maybe you just got out of a meeting where you sold 1 million copies of your game and you didn't make your money back, and life has not been kind to you. You're that person.
It's like the spectrum of good choices to bad choices. You're 100% pegged on bad choices.
Just give me an over hard egg and a whiskey. I've had a day.
Yeah.
Are we good with the emails, Brad? Or
let's call it there.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for sending them in. The email address is podcast@nextlander.com, podcast@nextlander.com, podcast@nextlander.com. You got to do it 3 times, or you might as well not have done it at all. We've got a bunch of stuff going up on the Patreon. We're continuing with our Watchcast. We are on the wrap-up of Twin Peaks Season 2. We have our next episode, which is 3 Twin Peaks 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. And then we'll be in the season finale.
Yeah, so we're almost done. So we actually have to decide soon what we're going to do for the in-between thing before we do more Twin Peaks.
Hell yeah. I'm very excited to see how this all wraps up, and very excited to see where the Watchcast goes, not only because we should be getting to more Twin Peaks in the future, but I really enjoy the Watchcast, Alex. So you can go catch that on the Patreon. We'll have Never Been a Better podcast, I believe, recording next week, so you can look for that. We've got the Ramblecast, whole bunch of stuff going on over there. Q&A is up. That was a really good Q&A. If you want to figure out what's going on over in the Nextlander verse, you can go check that out over at patreon.com/Nextlander, where you can find a tier that is just right for you. And there is one tier there, the Mysterious Benefactors tier, that gets their name read on this year's show. Alex Navarro, do you mind reading those Mysterious Benefactors for us today?
I do. I mean, I don't, but I will, is what I meant to say.
I gotcha.
All right. Our Mysterious Benefactors for this week are Sean Miller, Ryan Waterman, RRE, Infelicitous Rips, Kelly F., Brian Lucier, Skywarp, John Hubbard, Evan Cook, Mark Wilhelm, Jerry Lee, Deirdre of Dojima, Gary Pejsky, Robert Fisher, Bunny Fiend, the, Peter Reardon, Jad Rita, Statics, Fantastic Asm 89, Andrew Jackson, Mega Crane, Raz Grizz II, Brian Murphy, Randy Duax, Andrew Tiepkin, Alex Wu, It's Me JP, Matt Clements Jr., Edward Chick, Andrew Slosky, Steve Lynn, Matthew Herrig, David Campos, and Tyler Treese.
Those are our Mysterious Benefactors for this week. Thanks to everyone who has supported us over at patreon.com/Nextlander, and everyone who's listened in, watched, spread the good vibes. We appreciate it. Brad mentioned it earlier, but if you're listening to this at the time of release, you can catch him playing some Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'll be streaming that a little bit later in the schedule. So check that out, I think 6 p.m. Eastern. So you can see that on our upcoming schedule. And then we'll be playing some Suicide Squad on Friday. We're gonna see what this is all about. Heard it's a great looking game. Heard it's fantastic.
We'll find out.
Will Smith, where can people find you? How can they get How can they out you? How can they get at you if they are looking to hire an extremely talented person and friend of this podcast?
If you are looking to hire I've been told I'm T-shaped, which means I'm good at communications and also have a lot of other skills. You can find me. I'm Not That Will Smith on LinkedIn is the easiest place to reach out and send me a DM or whatever. We also, I do this podcast with this Brad Shoemaker guy every Sunday called Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod, which you can find at techpod.content.town, where all good content lives. Other than that, I'm just about town. I sometimes stream on Twitch, the Fortnites. If you like to watch a Fortnite, if you want to see some people do horrible mashups with, Lady Gaga and U2 and, I don't know what has a good. I'm trying to think of what has it. Like those 9 Inch Nails bass lines are just real good. That's all I'm going to say.
They always have been.
Turns out that guy knows bass. So yeah, that's at Not That Will Smith. Twitch.tv/Not That Will Smith. So thanks for having me, guys. It's fun to come see you. It's like old times.
Yes, old whiskey times.
Yes.
And thanks again, Will, for adding some much needed insight to those conversations. I'm sure we'll be having more of them throughout the year about the games industry. Thank you, Brad Shoemaker. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Will. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll be back next week.